The meeting. I'm Superintendent Jim Culkeen. This is reorganization night, so we currently don't have a chair, so. Oh, are you?
These are not PA mics, they're just for TV.
So you are getting us?
I'm getting you.
Oh, okay. I'll talk louder. So first I'm going to do a reorganization to elect a new chair, and then I will turn the meeting over to the chair. So the first order of business, the nominations are in order for the chair of the Bennington School District Incorporated Board of Directors. Are there any nominations?
I nominate Chris Murphy.
I second it.
First and seconded for Chris Murphy. Are there any other nominations for chair? Hearing none, I will close the nominations. Since it's a single nomination in motion, do you wish to elect by acclamation?
Yes.
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? One opposed. Any abstentions? One abstention. Did you have that, Richard?
Yep.
All right, so I will announce that Chris Murphy has been elected the chair of the Bennington School District Board of Directors by a count of 1, 2, did you vote?
I did not vote.
So it's 4 to 1 to 1. And I will turn the meeting over to you.
So nominations are in order for the vice chair of the Bennington School District Incorporated Board of Directors. Do I have any nominations?
I nominate Charlie.
Thank you. Can I have a second for Jure OConnor?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Dan. Are there any other nominations? So hearing none, since it is a single nominee, do you wish to elect by acclamation?
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Julie Hudson voting and opposed, and any, the other one?
Abstentions.
Thank you. Any abstentions? Great. 1, 0. Congratulations. So nominations are in order for the clerk of the Bennington School District Incorporated Board of Directors. In this last year, we did without a clerk, and I fulfilled some of those duties, but certainly if there is a nomination for a clerk.
I nominate myself.
Great, Jackie Prue. Are there any seconds for Jackie Prue?
Second.
Great. Any other nominations
All
for
yours.
clerk? Hearing none, since it is a single nominee, do you wish to elect by acclamation?
Yes.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. Congratulations, Jackie Prue. Thank you very much. You're a board chair, board clerk, rather. So the second agenda item is a review of the policy 7300, which is public participation in board meetings.
Yeah, in the back, you need your SU chairs.
Oh, thank you. So nominations are in order for representatives for the SVSU Board of Directors from the BSD. 2 members are to be elected for the SVSU Board, and I would nominate Chayla Sikora. Is there a second for Chayla?
Second.
Thank you. And I would also nominate Dan Monks.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations?
Was Dan at Yale last year?
Dan was not in last year. I was in last year.
Chris was.
So there are only the 2 nominations for the 2 slots. So do you wish to elect by acclamation?
No.
Okay. All those in favor of Chayla Sikora representing the BSD and the SVSU, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Can I just have a show of hands, please? 4, 5. I'll vote for that as well. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. So congratulations, Chayla. All those in favor of electing Dan Monks as an SVSU rep from the BSD, please signify by raising your hand and saying aye.
Aye.
1, 2, 3. So I have Meredy, Jackie Kelly, Chayla, and myself. All those against, please raise your hand. 2 against and no abstentions. All right, so congratulations, Dan. You've also been elected to the SVSU board, SVSU rep for the BSD.
On your committees, you can wait, you can ask who wants to be on it and then go around. Somebody-
Nominations are also in order for an SVSU board alternate. This was filled by Mary Capella last year. Do I have any nominations for the alternate?
I'll do it again.
Thank you. So Jayla nominates Merity, and I second that. Any other nominations? All right, hearing none. So since it is a single nominee, do you wish to vote by acclamation?
Yep.
Great. All those in favor, please raise your hand saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Seems unanimous. Any opposed? Or abstentions? Very good. Okay, so congratulations, Merity. Thank you. And the other committee assignments will be announced at our next regularly scheduled meeting. So now, on to 7 to 300, which is a review of the public participation in board meetings. And I will simply read this. So the SVSU and all belonging schools desire members of the general public to attend school board and prudential committee meetings to become better acquainted with the operation and programs of the schools and the boards and the school boards. The school boards and prudential committee members desire to have an opportunity to hear public comments on posted agenda items and ideas of the public for future agenda items. All meetings of the board and prudential committee are meetings held in the public following the Vermont Open Meeting Law. The school boards and prudential committee reserves the right to meet in non-public session to discuss such matters as are properly considered executive session items in accordance with VSA Title I, Section 313. The school boards and prudential committee reserve the right to eliminate public comment agenda items when a meeting is posted as executive session only. The school boards and prudential committee also reserve the right to adjourn or recess a meeting at any time by majority vote. Part 2, procedures. In order to assure that persons who wish to appear before the school boards or prudential committee may be heard and at the same time conduct meetings properly and efficiently, the school boards and prudential committee adopt the following procedures and rules pertaining to public participation in board meetings. A. For each meeting, an agenda item entitled Public Comments shall provide residents opportunities to address the school boards and prudential committee. B. The chairs of the school boards or prudential committee shall facilitate public comments, guiding the process for relevancy and time to allow members sufficient time to conduct warned matters. C. Non-residents wishing to speak in public comments may address the school board or prudential committee if time permits and at the discretion of the school boards or prudential committee. D. The school boards or prudential committee vest in its chairperson or other presiding officer authority to terminate the remarks of any individual or close public comments when comments do not adhere to the rules for content or time limitation. Section 3, public comments. A. Any individual desiring to speak shall give his or her name, address, and the group, if any, represented. The presentation should be as brief as possible and indicate any desired outcome. B. Written remarks requiring board action regarding posted agenda items are accepted and will be shared publicly per policy number 7192, quote, correspondence to the board. Those giving public comments are encouraged to share supportive remarks and may offer such objective criticisms of school operations and programs as concern them. C. The school boards or prudential committee shall not hear personal complaints of school personnel or complaints against any person connected with the school system during public comments, directing individuals with such concerns to follow policy. And D. If questions are directed by the public to the school board or prudential committee on topics that have not been posted as agenda items, answers shall be deferred pending consideration by the full school board or prudential committee and respective district and supervisory union administrators in a timely manner. And this policy was adopted by all of the members of the SVSU between November of 2014 and February of 2015. So, the next item on the agenda is a statement regarding confidentiality of personnel issues. In late January, the Bennington School District Board of Directors took a personnel action citing a desire to move Bennington Elementary School in a new direction administratively. There have been requests from some members of the community for clarity on this point. Specifically, the BSD hopes to recruit an assistant principal with areas of expertise in K-1 reading. Additionally, the BSD expects that the assistant principal will eagerly embrace and implement with fidelity the Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports, otherwise known as PBIS, and the Comprehensive Integrated 3 Tiers Model of Prevention, known as CI3T.
can't hear you, Chris.
Okay. I will repeat that whole thing. In late January, the Bennington School District Board of Directors took a personnel action, citing a desire to move Bennington Elementary School in a new direction administratively. There have been requests from some members of the community for clarity on this point. Specifically, the BSD hopes to recruit an assistant principal with areas of expertise in K-1 reading. Additionally, the BSD expects that the assistant principal will eagerly embrace and implement with fidelity the positive behavioral interventions and supports, otherwise known as PBIS, and the comprehensive integrated 3 tiers model of prevention known as CI3T. We acknowledge that some members of the community want more detail. It would be wholly inappropriate for this board to discuss a personnel matter outside of executive session or to expose any part of the personnel record of any school employee, regardless of the community's call for specific information regarding an employee's performance. Ethically and legally, this board has no other option. So with that, we'll now open it to public comments. Did anyone who wishes to make a public comment who is either a Bennington resident or a teacher at Bennell not have an opportunity to sign up?
I would like to speak first if I could.
Chris, could I note something for the record, please?
Sure, Jody, please.
I would like it noted for the record, Richard. I do not believe this board's statement to be accurate, and I do not support it as read.
So noted. Mr. O'Connor, you are not at the top of the list, but if you would like to speak first.
Okay, if I speak first?
That would be fine. So with that said, folks, because there are so many people signed up, because we do have an extended period of time, you won't, but this is for the rest of the crew as well. The expectation is that folks hold it to 3 minutes, please, and we do have a timekeeper. So if we can keep within those parameters, that would be excellent. So.
First, I'd like to say about the statement, I'm not sure that you didn't mention Bennington Elementary per se. So you said Bennington School District. So does that fall for Molly Stark and Bennington School, Elementary School? Because I would assume the same thing would have to apply for that school. If that's what you're looking at, Molly Stark should have the same. Nothing against the assistant principal here, but I would hope that that person would have the same qualifications for that job as that you're applying that have to pertain to Bennell.
So the statement was personnel action citing a desire to move Bennington Elementary School
Okay,
in a new
I missed
direction
that part.
administratively.
Okay, so just our school alone has to meet that criteria. All right, I'd like to address the criteria first as far as assistant principal with the literacy piece. Assistant principal's role and position isn't necessarily understanding literacy. Not that I'm an elementary school teacher. I do have a license. I don't know if anybody on the board knows that, but I do have a license, so I can teach literacy. I think I know literacy pretty well. And here's my problem. When I was given this non-renewal last year with no clarity, no clearance, and all these people, I got really tired of the comments of people making like, you must have done something wrong. Something must have happened. He's not telling the whole story, all right? Because this board refused to show any clarity or any transparency as to what happened. And by law, statute 20.1, you don't have to, because I'm an assistant principal. The statute in the state of Vermont, if you're a principal, you have the right to be justifiable cause. If you're assistant, you don't. And that rule has to change, and I hope it does, but it might be too late for me. So the idea about this is if you thought you're going this new direction, did anybody take the time to say, Jerry, you want to go to the Reading Institute next summer to learn up on literacy, so because we could really use that for next year in the fall? Was I asked that? No, I wasn't. Because I would have gladly. I go to school every year. I take classes, I go to college, I take those courses. I would have loved to go on to the Reading Institute and hone my skills in literacy to better prepare our students. I was not given that opportunity. So your reasoning doesn't hold water with me. Second, PBIS. I am the coordinator. I've gone to Best Institute. I'm the coordinator for our building. Nancy and I have gone to all the coordinator state meetings. I'm well versed in PBIS. I wrote the song for our school for PBIS. I did the referral forms. I think I know PBIS pretty well. CI3T, not so much, but I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think anybody here can talk about CI3T and tell you exactly what it all means. Because it's all new, and we've changed like 2 or 3 times over the last 5 years with the movement of our school. It's about leadership. It's about MTSS. All right. It's about it's about children learning and all aspects of learning that we do. So I'm just it kind of bothers me that after 9 months of putting me through this and saying that I would get a chance to get my job by interviewing, by doing progress reports from Mr. Cocaine, and Donna Leap, and Edie Dunn. I spent all last year working hard to make that happen. And never given given an opportunity to speak to the board. I asked numerous times. I asked you, I've talked to Ms. Jackie Prue, talked to Jim Cocaine. When am I going to meet with the board? When am I going to meet with the board? When am I getting my chance? I promise after promise after promise, and it never happened. And then I was told by you, Dad, they don't want to meet with you. They feel they got enough information. Doesn't matter. And then my evaluation was supposed to be based on presenting to this board my evaluation about how I proceeded to keep my job. It was never written. It was written after the fact. So on January 9th, I was told by Mr. Cocaine in Edie's office that the board would not be moving me forward. I asked him about my evaluation. It wasn't written yet. So he made a decision without reading my evaluation. And then he said, well, I asked about potentially moving you for another year to work with Edie because you really have enough time. Maybe you need another year. And he said you refused that. And then you and I met. And I appreciate the fact that you didn't have to meet me, but you did. And I appreciate that. But I feel this board has never been transparent about it. If the thing was, let's get Mr. O'Connor done, I mean, if I'm a good employee, you said, we wanted somebody that's in literacy, maybe we can offer him a job somewhere else. That never happened. It's like Mr. O'Connor, he has to go, he's not fitting the role, he's not fitting the job at that school. It's kind of interesting because my students want me, my parents want me, my principal wants me, all right? My staff wants me, but these people sitting in this board don't. All I've been this year is a spectacle. It hurts me deeply if people feel I did something wrong. So, and in fact, the part about the personnel, I have folders I want to give everybody at this board, and in that folder has permission for every board member to look at my file. And I'm opening up. I took Sean Marie last week. Anybody can come to me. I will grant permission for them to go to the central office and look at every part of my personnel file. I'm an open book. I really mean that. So if anybody in this wants to see it, I will sign off. You can go look at my personnel file, and you can understand the decision they made based on what they based it on. I have no idea. And it's a shame that I worked this hard and this long in this district to be treated this way. You owe me the opportunity. You did. You owe me the opportunity. Last year, in February, in the meeting, Mr. Cocaine, nothing but Dr. Mugis, when he resigned and he chastised the board, you stood up and told everybody, wow, I've never seen a crowd back somebody so well. And here I am standing here today, people in hand supporting me. And nobody's going to say anything in my defense or this board say anything why you didn't get the opportunity to meet with me, to talk to me, to get to know who I am. Instead of making a comment, well, you shouldn't personalize our decision. How personal is it to lose your job? I got my wife back there, I have my son back there, I got a grandson. And then June 30th, I might not have a job. And everybody's, well, what did you do wrong? And I just, that statement that you just made, I'm sorry, but that was, that's lawyer talk. Let's say this, then we can get out of this. And then, Jerry goes on with his life, and you guys go on with yours. It's not fair. It's not right. This board knows better. Needs to be better. We're teaching our kids and our students in our buildings how to resolve conflict, how to get along, how to make good judgment calls, how to be fair and consistent, and have honor and have dignity. And I'm sorry, but this board has not shown me that. And I would appreciate more. So when those packets I give to you, I hope you take the time to read them. There's evaluations in there of all the people over the years I've worked with. There are professional development stuff I have done. And in there also are the 4 things in my file that people here at this board say that I didn't do due diligence, or the reason why I'm let go. And all it is a notice by the board last June that you were thinking about not bringing me back, a significant number. I don't know who that significant number is. I don't know if you're a significant number. I don't know if you're a significant number. I don't know if you're a significant number. Because nobody said anything. And then I did a waiver because I was told at that meeting, Jerry, we have a chance to keep your job if you work hard this year. And I said to Ms. Murphy and Mr. Cocaine, I said, I'll take that. And I know you remember me saying that. I'm going to take that job on. I'm going to prove to you the glass is half full. And you said I'm proud of you for doing it. I appreciate the fact you're working on that. Met 4 times over the school year. Met with Mr. Cocaine and Donnelly. Never once did they say I had a subpar performance. Not once. Then my evaluation gets written. The only bad evaluation I've ever had in 22 years, just got it, February 26th. So I wrote a 4,900-word rebuttal to that evaluation. It's in the file you're going to get today. I hope you read it. And Mr. Colleen, I appreciate if you put it in my file as a response to my evaluation. I just wanted fairness, people. That's all I want. Thank you.
So next up is Kristin Mac.
I'm Kristin Mac. I'm from Bennington. I'm here because I want to see Jure OConnor's contract renewed. My daughter was at Bennell for kindergarten last year and this year for part of first grade. Our decision to pull her was based on many factors, but it was not because of a lack of support from her teachers or the staff we were working with. That includes Jure OConnor. When Fiona already had what feels like a small army fighting for her, Jure still took the time to reach out to her dad and I, and to her, to give her another place to go in that school. He didn't have to do this. He did. And in the short time we were at Bennell, I saw him reaching out to countless students and families and making connections I didn't think possible. He's an asset to Bennell. Just a couple of things I want to point out that were promised along the way from this board were transparency, wider board involvement from parents, teachers, allowing that to happen, making decisions with a clear understanding of the problems, and making decisions to best benefit the community. In this situation, I don't think that's happened.
Next is Alberto Harrington.
Good evening. My name is Alberto Harrington. I'm a Bennington resident and a retired SVSU teacher. I was Mr. O'Connor's cooperating teacher right here at Molly Stark when he did his student teaching. At that time, Mr. O'Connor was changing careers after a long career in grocery store management. He was going to school, working full-time, raising his then still young family and coaching. Somehow he was doing it all. When I asked him why, he told me that he wanted to give back to this community. He wanted to make a difference, as some teachers had made a difference in his life when he was growing up. As a student teacher, Mr. O'Connor put in extra time and effort to improve his lesson plans and delivery. He sought out new ideas and accepted constructive direction. These traits continued as I worked with Mr. O'Connor and the 6th grade team at the middle school in my career as SVSU staff development specialist. This is the essence of Mr. O'Connor, a man of integrity. Here is my question to Mr. Culkeen and the members of the BSD board. This new direction that you are going in couldn't possibly use the skill of an educator devoted to his students, his community, and who wants to make a difference? Please reinstate Mr. O'Connor for the good of our school district. Thank you for listening.
Next is Laurie Muller.
Good evening. There are so many issues that I wish to discuss tonight, but I'm going to limit myself to the 3 minutes, otherwise I'd take up everybody else's time. I think the board has made some significant mistakes by not hearing their community. It is part of the board's responsibility and duty to serve their community. This community is saying, Mr. O'Connor is an asset. I'm not sure what it is that you have or that you feel Mr. O'Connor can't bring to the table, because that hasn't been made clear. It hasn't even been made clear to his own school that you were even considering letting him go, because that letter that was given to him last year, I don't think anyone was aware of that. And as administrators play such a key role in every school, I would have thought that you would have felt it best to share that information with the community. The other issue I have here is the board's decision not to allow public comments. You can go ahead into executive session, but denying the community members the right to address their board, to voice their concerns, I have a serious issue with that. You represent and serve the community. By refusing to respond to them, by refusing to accept comment from them, you are denying them their right to share their concerns. Step it up. And if you have some other issues in the background with leadership or administrators, then be honest and open about it. Be transparent. None of this stuff behind the scenes. We don't accept it. We demand transparency. And we expect it coming forth from you this year. And I am asking for Mr. O'Connor to be reinstated. He is an asset. I've known him for 20 years. I've seen him move from school to school to school. He received a national certification. That takes dedication. To be a teacher for this long, let's talk about burnout and turnover just in the SU. You know, I think it's really important you give him the credit he deserves and the position he deserves, as well as the respect he deserves. Thank you.
Before we move on, I'm going to reiterate the second paragraph of the board statement before, because there's a theme that's coming up that I want people to hear. Even though it is unsatisfactory to many of you, I would like to say it again. We acknowledge that some members of the community want more detail. It would be wholly inappropriate for this board to discuss a personnel matter outside of executive session or to expose any part of the personnel record of any school employee, regardless of the community's call for specific information regarding an employee's performance. Ethically and legally, this board has no other option. So with that, I'll move it to Ms. Allie Sharpman, please.
As a parent and teacher of Bennell, I was extremely disappointed to learn that Jure OConnor's contract as assistant principal would not be renewed. For the past 6 years, I have been lucky enough to work with Jure and be inspired by the amount of heart and time that he puts into caring for our school community. Jure OConnor has dedicated numerous hours to the students, families, and staff of Bennell. Throughout the day, Jure is a visible presence in the school, building strong connections with students from kindergarten to 5th grade. He has worked to promote our school's parent-teacher group that we have served on together for the past 6 years. I am certain that without his support and involvement, this group would not have been successful in raising money to send students on field trips and coordinating events that welcome families into our school and build community. As part of the parent-teacher group, Jure has helped organize staff stunts to raise money for cancer treatment and research. During staff stunts, Jure has allowed students to help him shave his head, allow students to throw pies in his face, and has participated in a tricycle race. Jure brings this enthusiasm with him every day to our school. He makes it a place where students want to be and staff can teach. Jure has also been the backbone of our PBIS organization and team since becoming assistant principal. PBIS, as you said in your statement, is an important part of our school and our district. Actually, at a recent school board meeting, you recommended and congratulated our school for receiving an award in PBIS. And I can assure you that without Jure OConnor, we would not have received this award. On top of all of this, Jure also helps to run enrichment programs and opportunities after school for students that are interested in challenging themselves outside of the grade level curriculum. I have seen former students and my own child benefit significantly from these efforts. As a teacher, I have always felt fully supported by Jure. He makes himself available during the day, after school, and even on the weekends, whenever someone requires his assistance or advice. Jure is inspiration to all of us at Bennell for the effort and the heart that he brings with him daily to our school. Each day, he goes above and beyond the call of duty for our school community.
So next on the list is Valerie Hope. Ms. Hope, are you an educator? Yes, I reckon yes. So please.
I'm here tonight to share the positive changes that have been taking place at Bennington Elementary School for the 2017 and 2018 school year. Since Principal Dunn began this past summer, Jure OConnor has been instrumental in acclimating her to our school and community. They began working together in July, establishing their roles and how they could make Bennell a successful school. Jure and Edie have taken ownership of our school, where they have been successfully implementing building-wide, SVSU-wide, and statewide initiatives, including MTSS, or CI3T, and PBIS. Jure and Edie have been successful at creating a positive school climate where our staff morale is high, students feel safe and cared for, and our building is moving forward in a positive direction. Edie and Jure, as a team, are the driving force behind all of these positive changes. Moving forward in a new direction where a new assistant principal replaces Jure OConnor would be detrimental. As we all know, it takes several years for a principal to make lasting changes. Edie and Jure together have expedited that process due to their great working relationship. In closing, it would take hours to share everything Jure OConnor does at Bennell. His commitment, loyalty, and selflessness would be difficult to replace. Please reconsider your vote.
Next is Laurie Muller.
Hello. I'm here tonight to share my observations after reviewing meeting minutes and documents produced over the last year regarding BSD's vision and executive sessions related to the various topics that are listed. I shared this timetable with you, which was, I left at all of your places. First, it's been a busy year for BSD. 2 contract negotiations, teachers and ESP, Act 46, a construction project over the summer. In addition, there were 2 very informative presentations on the annual progress review and paraeducators in special education. The 4 new board members started their tenure on March 16th, 2017 meeting, hiring the new principal for Bennell, Edie Dunn. Her words, which are both in the minutes and in the newspaper article the next day, stand out even now. She stated, she understands that Bennington Elementary may be her most difficult and challenging position ever, and that there is a lot of work to do, and looks forward to applying her high energy and efficacy to improve the Bennington school experience. Then, over the next 3 months, April, May, and June, the BSD spent 61 minutes in executive session, and while the public only knows what was stated on the agenda in terms of personnel contracts, superintendent's evaluations, and appointing public officers, the BSD made the decision prior to June 30th, 2017 not to renew Mr. O'Connor's assistant principal contract. Though this decision was not made public on June 8th, 2017, the day after the June 7th board meeting, Mr. O'Connor signed a waiver giving the board the authority to act on the non-renewal until March 1st, 2018. According to the SVSU Administrator Contract, Section 21, the board does not need a reason to non-renew. They simply need to give written notice with appropriate timing. However, principals in Vermont have the statute 16 VSA 243, renewal and non-renewal of principals, to protect them. In this memo, in this statement that I give you, it's actually written, so I won't take the time. I've given you the timeline that focuses on executive sessions over the past year, as well as highlighting discussions or lack thereof of training, retreats, visions, and new directions for the BSD school district. The board or chairman has talked about when and where to have a retreat and talked about requesting agenda items, but there is no evidence of discussion with regard to any of these topics except on June 7th, 2017. On June 7th, the board chair read a statement that he put together. However, even after reading this statement, there was no board discussion, at least no discussion at warned public meetings. I point this out because the board is claiming or stating the non-renewal of Mr. O'Connor's contract is to go in a new direction. That is a reason. Yet, no new direction has ever been discussed in an open meeting over this past year. I won't repeat your statement, you all know it. The implication that the board cannot talk about personnel matters implies there is something in a person's personnel file. That might be a reason for non-renewing a person's contract. I went through Mr. O'Connor's file with him after he gave me signed permission to the SVSU HR generalist. Mr. O'Connor and I went through his file, in front of the SVSU's HR generalist, page by page last week. There are no letters of reprimand, no complaints, no unsatisfactory evaluations in over 20 years, except the one placed in Mr. O'Connor's file on mid-February of this year, long after you made your decision on June of 2017 and announced the non-renewal on January 31st. The contract states in section 5.3, a complaint regarding an administrator to any member of the central office administration by a parent, student, teacher, or other person which warrants investigation and which may be used in evaluation or result in a disciplinary action will be called to the attention of the administrator involved within 5 days of the date of the complaint was made. The board shall reduce the complaint in writing within 10 business days after that, and you can read the rest of it. It's in the contract. One could presume, according to section 5.3 of the contract, that there would in fact be some evidence of Mr. O'Connor's file if any complaints rose to the level of seriousness. And if I, as I have said previously, there are no such damning letters or evaluations until February 2018's unsatisfactory evaluation done by the superintendent and the assistant superintendent. The evaluation was not done by the principal, who works day by day, day in, day out with the assistant principal. Add to all of what I said, I find it extremely unusual that a board would act without the recommendation of a superintendent. I could see a superintendent recommending an action to the board and the board voting to accept or not accept this recommendation. But to make a personnel non-renewal decision based solely on the board's awareness is highly suspect, especially when 4 new members, a majority of the board, made this decision within 3 months of their tenure. In conclusion, it seems the board's decision must have been based on their desire for a new direction. It is, however, extremely unfortunate the Bennington community at large, and the Bennington community specifically, are entirely unaware of this new direction. Thank you. Also,
Next is Pete LaFlamme.
I'm Pete LaFlamme. I'm here to support Jure OConnor.
Mr. LaFlamme, could you step to the microphone, please?
I'll just talk louder because I can't hear what everyone's saying out there, so I think I'll just speak up. Oh, I'm young here. So I'm just going to speak loudly so everyone can hear. I'm here to support Jure. I'm a teacher at Mount Anthony Middle School. This is my 36th year of teaching, so I've been around for a while. I started at old junior high where I got to know Jure very well. I know him as a person. I know him as a teacher. I know him as a father to his kids. I know him as a coach. In every capacity that I know him, he does an excellent job. I echo all the positive things that have been said here tonight. And frankly, I'm very shocked still, and I was shocked when I first heard that his contract was not going to be renewed. I'm still in a state of disbelief. I just can't believe it. Because he's a great man, and I know he's a great educator, you're making a big mistake. When you hired him, you hired the right guy. No question in my mind, he is still the right guy for this job. He is... Jure works in everything that he does. And I know he's working very hard to take Bennington Elementary School in the right direction. For you to say that you want to go in a different direction it just doesn't make sense to me. Because I know he's working tirelessly to bring Bennington Elementary into the right direction. Frankly, I feel like he's being made out to be a scapegoat for problems and issues that you haven't really touched on that are happening at Bennington Elementary. I'm sure there must be some big problems and big issues there, or else you wouldn't have gone to such a drastic thing as to not renew his contract. But I can assure you, and I guarantee you that the fault is not his. It's not his responsibility for any issues that are happening there. I
I guarantee you that he's doing everything in his power to rectify those issues and make them right. I think you need to apologize. Really, I think you owe him and his family a big apology. You can imagine what he's been through. You've drug his name through the mud here in Bennington. Listen to everything that everyone has said here about him. You really need to owe him an apology. And you need to make this wrong right. The only way you can do that is to reinstate him as an administrator here. It's not going to look bad for you to do that. It's not going to be humiliating for you. It's not going to say, oh, we're weak, we buckle to the pressure. On the contrary, you will be respected for such a thing by realizing that you've made a terrible mistake and you're willing to go the long way and make it right. By reinstating him, it's really the only thing to do here. You will actually be more respected and admired by your constituents if you do that. People won't look at you as weak and buckling. They'll look at you as strong and have an integrity because you realize your mistake and you are willing to make it right by changing your mind. You need to do that.
Next is Jim Law, please.
For full transparency, I'm not a resident of Bennington, so may I speak?
Sure.
Okay. That's a mistake. This is not the action you should be taking. I received tonight from somebody in the audience a letter from the Secretary of Education indicating that Bennell was noted as a Vermont PBIS exemplar school. Isn't that one of the qualifications that you're looking for in your principal? In your new principal, assistant principalship that you're looking for? CI3T, Jerry can pick that up easily. Literacy, he can pick it up easily. There is no reason for him not to be at Bennington Elementary. Integrity has been mentioned a few times tonight. Jerry is a man of integrity. There is no question about that. If he had faults, he would talk with you about them. He would share what those were, and he would work on making those better. I've worked with him as his principal in one of the schools in Bennington. He went to another school. I was transferred to that school. I supervised him there, and I was fortunate to be able to have him as an assistant principal. He carries a heavy load. He does a good job. The only thing that I can think in my mind is either the board doesn't understand the needs of Bennington Elementary or there's something unprofessional in the background. Thank you.
Next is Katrina Snide.
Sorry, I'm a little bubbly because I'm nervous. All right, first I want to just say you guys are super lucky that Jody is here because she's so smart and she cares a lot. And congratulations, Mary. And who knows, maybe I'll run again. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. Okay, so that's the first thing out of the gate. But then second, really, I want to address the things that I hope that our board can do this year to be better. And in this coming year. So I watched all of the meetings, I read and reread all of the minutes over the last year. And in prepping for our scary Cat TV interview, I watched yours and oh my gosh, you guys rocked it, so good job. But one thing I noticed in that is you guys constantly talked about transparency. And I don't know if maybe we have a different definition of what that is. And I'm not even talking about Jerry. I'm talking about stuff like Title I money and the demographics missing from reports and things like that. I just think that you guys have this great opportunity to listen to the people who elected you and to communicate with each other and with us. we are depending on you to hear what we want and to do it, and not what you guys all want. And I respect all of you. You guys are not up there because you're anything less than good at what you do and wherever you are, and you bring something to this table that's good, but I think there's this big gap in between you and us, and I know it's not just you. We all need to be here more often, but we do need you guys to communicate, and we need that transparency. And yeah, I do want you to rethink what you're doing with Jerry, because he's awesome and he works really hard, and you've heard it a million times, so that's not going to change anything. But I just want you just to remember that we're a team. Our community is a team. We are not on Team Monument, Team Molly, and Team Bennell. We are on Team Bennington.
Thank you, Carrie. Jeannie Jenkins is next.
Good evening. I'm here to speak about the process that has been followed in making this decision and what I hope will be the next steps. First, I want to say the things we know. We know that there was a warrant. Jerry received a warning last spring. We know there have been periodic meetings with central office. We know that there was a decision in January by this board not to renew, and that decision was because we were going to move in a new direction. Other things we know that there was no public board discussion about moving in any direction with our schools by this board. We know that there were no written corrective plans in Jerry's file. We know that there were no written comments relating to periodic meetings between central office and Jerry in his file. We know that there were no evaluations that were negative in his file until this year after the non-renewal was determined. Other things we know that this man has more support than Father Christmas. Look at this audience. We have teachers, we have staff, we have administrators, we have present students, we have former students, we have parents, we have community members. Everyone is in support. In fact, I apparently am looking at what is perhaps the only group of people who are not in support of his renewal. When I think about that, I think about it, you're all good people. I worked in support of most of you on this board. This isn't about your character. This is about process. You've made a mistake. I think actually you've made two mistakes. One was the non-renewal, but the other is not following a process that provides clarity for an employee and transparency for the public. The public does not want to know what transpires between an employee and an employer. That is not what we're asking here. We're asking to know what was the process that was followed? How does it work? What are the checkpoints? How was the evaluation done? Here's what I think you need to do. I think you need to follow a process. You need to follow a process that we all are part of, that we know what the process is. We know what you're doing and why you're doing it. To that end, I would recommend that you renew Jerry's contract with an identified time period, 1 year, 2 year, your decision. Identify benchmarks for success. And this is not just for Jerry. I mean, I'm assuming that this type of process would be in place for every administrator. You would identify the benchmarks for success, and then you would identify and follow an evaluation process. It's not very difficult. That's what transparency is. That's what clarity means. And then, while you were doing that, I think you would find that Bennington is a community that would welcome discussion about new directions we could take to enhance academic excellence in this community. Let's use our school board meetings as a time where we sit down as a community and talk about what are the new directions, or the continued directions we need to go in to provide excellence. No one said it yet, but this is Sunshine Week, which is pretty ironic. It's a national initiative focused on the importance of open government and the dangers of unnecessary secrecy. You have an opportunity during Sunshine Week to shine some light on the process. Thank you for your attention, and I hope you'll take our thought.
Next is Morgan Flynn.
Good evening. I came to you at the town floor meeting about a week ago. I'm just going to restate basically what I said at that meeting, the bottom portion of it. So I presented you guys with over 500 signatures for Mount Anthony students and concerned taxpayers that feel that this decision is wrong, and we want you guys to reconsider this. The town of Bennington and Mount Anthony students, his former students, we stand with him. We don't stand with you guys, not at all. And so I'm just going to restate what that statement from the petition said. So I said, we the people feel that Jure OConnor's contract should be renewed. We encourage the Bennington School Board and the superintendent, now superintendents, to reconsider this decision. So I'll also say, when meeting with students to gain signatures, I engaged in many conversations on how Jure OConnor has impacted their lives through athletics, academics, administration. The man has done so much for this community. And it's unfair. It really is unfair. And like I've said before, I mean, if we're trying to throw him out for test scores, I mean, we can't only just look at the administrators and the teachers. We need to look at the parents in this community. And as every single one of you at this table knows, Bennington Elementary is a high poverty school. So we really need to consider this decision and just reconsider it, please. There's not really anything else to say. But I mean, if you're here solely in support of Jure OConnor, will you please stand? This is just one more step to prove to you all that we all stand with him and not with this board. Have a good night.
This is Chris Mayer.
Hi, my name is Chris Mayer, for those of you who don't know me. I was here last time for the last meeting at the town meeting. And I just want to reiterate some of the stuff I said last time. Since the decision to not renew Mr. OConnor's contract has been made public, many students as well as taxpayers and community members have protested peacefully, have signed petitions, all of which are asking for you to reconsider your decision and bring Mr. OConnor back. As many former students have shared stories with me, I have learned that as students and as people who have worked with him have realized that he was not only an amazing man, but an amazing administrator, coach, mentor, teacher, and role model. If Mr. OConnor is not brought back, Bennell will be left in chaos, which could be avoided, but will not be, because the board will have to be trying to find somebody who does not have as much experience and expertise in what he has been doing. He has done so much for our community, and now I am calling on you, the school board, to make the right decision. Listen to us, the voters who have voted you into the very seats you are sitting in right now. We thought you had our interests in mind, and we have learned that you have not. We're trying to help you correct a wrong, one that needs to be fixed for the sake of our students. Please renew Mr. Jure OConnor's contract as Vice Principal of Bennington Elementary.
Next, Nancy Haines, please.
Hey, everybody. You know, I've said a lot. You've seen me up here before, and it's very interesting that you brought up that you're looking for an assistant principal with literacy experience, when we just hired a literacy coach for our building and one for the SVSU, and we have, I don't know how many others in our school, but we have at least 3 others in our school. And do our kids need to learn to read? Are they proficient readers? No. they can't even come into school and sit and access learning for the first part of the day. And that's what Jerry and I do on a daily basis. We work with those kids. You guys, you can't just bring somebody into that school. We wear spit. We are kicked, we are hit, we are verbally abused on a very consistent basis, and we come back the next day because that's what those kids need. It would be really cool if we just needed to teach them to read. But we have so much work to do. And again, you know, I just invited you, Mr. Murphy, but what I really meant, it's with passion and heart that I talk to you guys. You've got to see what happens. How can somebody evaluate an assistant principal that spends an hour a year in a building? You guys, I just don't get that. I mean, and that's kind of ruining someone's life. And I don't think that's what you want to do. But that's what's really happening here. And we need so much more support and so much more than we're given. It is a battlefield day after day. And I just think you're making a huge mistake. And I love Jure OConnor, and I love working with him. And I just want to thank all of you, all of my staff members and everyone for supporting. Because, guys, it's not easy to stand up here because you know what? It's scary. Who's going to be next? And that's kind of the culture that we're cultivating here. The high school, we're paying for 2 principals. We have 0. I mean, that's really where we're headed. Someone has to be. I hope you can reconsider, and I appreciate you letting me speak. Have a great night.
Next is Caroline Wysinski.
I'm Caroline Musinski, and this is Sam White, and we wrote this letter. I'm a junior at Mount Anthony, and I'd like to read this. We have acknowledged that Jure OConnor could possibly be losing his position as assistant principal at Bennington Elementary School. After roughly 6 years, before this job, Jure had worked at Mount Anthony Union Middle School for a very long time. As the group of girls who are writing this, we personally have never had him as a teacher or an assistant principal, but we do know that he is very passionate about what he does. A few years back, we were struggling to find a coach for our girls' AAU basketball team. When we were about to give up, Jure stepped forward to help. After that moment, he voluntarily dedicated 2 nights a week and almost every weekend to coach us through our practices and tournaments, despite his busy schedule with all his other priorities. Even to this day, Jure continues to support the 6 of us attending every one of our home basketball games and still goes out of his way to give us tips when needed. Jure OConnor is a hardworking man who loves his job and every single kid he works with. He puts the majority of his time into helping the kids with their academics and even their basketball skills. Upon hearing about this devastating news, we decided to write this letter to inform the public about our relationship with Jure and how dedicated he is to the school and his students. Jure OConnor is a huge asset to the community, and it's a shame that this is happening. Thank you.
And last on the list is Jeannie Connor.
Thank you. There is one more person who didn't get to sign.
Okay.
Okay. I promise I'll be brief.
Thank you.
I hope all of you are sincerely interested in what we all have said tonight, and I expect all of you to give consideration to our words and our presence here tonight. As our elected officials, you owe us that. How this board reached the decision to not renew Jerry's contract, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. And the way he has been treated has eroded trust and confidence in each of you individually and as a board collectively. And I question your ability to advocate for the kids in the BSD district. I also feel, as Jeannie does, I campaigned for you guys, a lot of you. I spent my money to get you elected. I just want you to know that. For me, this is very personal. There is no concrete evidence or documentation anywhere that Jerry has done anything wrong and should lose his job. Jerry is an irreplaceable asset to Bennell. He is their rock. He is a compassionate... He is a compassionate father figure to many kids at Bennell and a critical support person for their families. The community, the Bennell family, the staff, and Principal Dunn need and want him in their school. This community needs 100 more Jure OConnors. I'm going to repeat that. This community needs 100 more Jure OConnors, and you are getting rid of the one that we are lucky enough to have. I have been thinking about what this process would have been like if there had been a Bennell parent sitting at this table with you. Have you thought about how you would feel if Jure had helped boost your child's self-esteem or helped him or her through a difficult time? The loss of Jure would be tragic for Bennell and destabilize an already struggling school. I ask this board to think about the very real repercussions of your vote and listen, really listen, to the voices that matter most and know Jure better than any of you, and make this right.
Hi there.
Nikki Forrest, Library Media Specialist at Bennell. And one of the voices that she's talking about, and the voice that I'm here to talk to you about tonight, is the voice of the staff and the faculty at Bennell. School is a business, and students are our customers, and we need to do everything we can to keep them in school and engaged in their education. At Bennington Elementary School, we have one team, and that's Team Student. We want to surround our students with people who care about them and who can provide authentic learning. We also need people who can build and support a culture of security and safety here at our school, while at the same time motivating students to really engage in the educational process. We need people who can relate to children in trauma and respect their differences. Jure OConnor needs to continue to be part of Team Student. All of us here at Bennington Elementary School want to be very clear to both the superintendent and to the BSD board in our goal for this meeting. I had the opportunity this afternoon to meet with Superintendent Koch along with Andrea Ferrucci, a building rep for our teachers union, myself as a building rep, Valerie Hope as a teacher, and a building rep from the middle school. We went over the data that I presented to Mr. Murphy at the town meeting. So if there's any questions about that, I can take that later on. So our goals are twofold. One, to, again, go over the data. If you'd like to hear that about our survey, for those of you that don't know, the staff and faculty at the school participated in a survey from the Agency of Education's General Competencies for School Administrators. And we did this as a basis for measuring whether our assistant principal demonstrated knowledge and skills in certain areas. And I'll go over that in just a minute. Our other goal is that we are asking the superintendent and the BSD board to reconsider their decision not to renew Mr. O'Connor's contract. We ask this based on data, hard data presented from the survey, the 2 petitions by the young men that showcase the public perception of the excellent job that Mr. O'Connor is doing for our school and for our students, the most important part of our school. Nothing else is more important than our students. He has personal and professional support Mr. O'Connor has from townspeople, former board members, staff, teachers, members of local and state government, parents, and current and former students. The data is very clear. When you're looking at data is very clear from our survey. 97% response, higher than any other school who's done a recent survey. All the scores were between 86 and 100% supportive of what Mr. O'Connor provides the students, the staff, the parents, and the faculty of Bennell. He demonstrates knowledge and skills in every area of leadership, visionary planning, interpersonal and collaborative skills, partnerships, management of personnel, curriculum, instruction and assessment, and managing a safe and effective learning environment. He is an integral part of our PBIS team and works tirelessly for the students at our school. For the superintendent and the BSD board, it's really about doing the right thing for our students. Not for us, not for you, not for your reputation, but for the students of Bennington Elementary and Bennington County, the only thing that really matters. They're the ones who are going to be keeping our town going long after we're gone. We need to keep a strong leadership team intact and give Mr. O'Connor a new 2-year contract as assistant principal of Bennington Elementary School so he can continue to be part of Team Student. Thank you very much for your time, and we appreciate your reconsideration.
So next on the agenda, I'd like to invite Vic Milani to step forward and give an update on safety and security protocol and initiatives, please.
I didn't get on the list. May I I'll be brief.
Of course.
Okay, thank you.
Just a moment, please.
Thank you so much for letting me talk, and thank you for listening to all of us. My heart is pounding right now. But I really am here on Jerry's behalf. My name is Mary Migliozzi Chambers. I'm the music teacher at Bennington Elementary School. This is my 4th year. I know Jerry prior to Bennell because we go to church together. What I want to say today are all of the things that Jerry does as an assistant principal, and I've been teaching for 20 years, so I know that these are exceptional things. He takes children caroling to the nursing homes. He's present for activity days and part of the planning for those things. Field day. He runs a recycling group for the children, the 5th graders. He sets up and helps with penguin shoppers. He's on the PTA. He sets up the book fair. He comes to every evening concert and any other evening thing that is an event for the school, he is there. He also brings in SVU college students and he coordinates them. So he has hands in the community and connecting us to the community. I've never known an assistant principal in 20 years to be that involved. Not only that, he's extremely important of the arts and the music education at Bennington Elementary School. Sadly, a dying art, and it breaks my heart, but he is, I feel, always behind me, allowing me to teach children music. And I'm not going to get into all the studies that say how much children from poverty-stricken schools benefit from a music and an art education. I'm sorry to say it, more than reading. We have 4 literacy specialists. We have a principal who is has a strong literacy background. What we need is a principal, an assistant principal. I believe we have now a principal, and we had a principal also, who understands over 80% poverty because he lives across the street. Who would not want an assistant principal that lives across the street from the school? The poorest community of our districts. My children are going to go to Monument Elementary School, and I hope that when they go there that they will also still have a strong music education program. But the other thing that Jerry does is he uses me as a music therapist because that's my undergrad, and he uses the art teacher who is an art therapist. He has provided us extra spaces in our schedules to give music and art therapy to the children that need such services. I've never worked with an assistant principal that has offered me that opportunity. Never. So I just think that I think you guys are great. You've got a really hard job. I wouldn't want your job because I love mine. And he's the kind of guy that makes my job easier. He's not always the easiest guy to talk to because I like to talk a lot and he likes to talk a lot. And when you have 2 really passionate people about what they are, that can be difficult. So on that topic, I just want to say one more thing, and that's about a Facebook page, because I can't believe nobody's talked about it. There was a Facebook page last year slandering Bennell, and it came out again. And every time it came on, I went to the office and I was like, who's doing something about this? This is slander. And when his name was on that Facebook page, Chris Murphy, you were tagged every single time. No one went on those Facebook pages defending, well, very few people, defending us, teachers, our school, and our principal, our then principal, Mr. Law, and our current principal, Dunn. All of their names were slandered in public. And I was advised not to get involved. So I kept quiet, and I feel really bad about that, and I'm going to say it publicly. I feel really bad about not going on a public Facebook page and saying these things are wrong. Because some of the complaints from parents on that page, while all legitimate, those are some were struggling students who that very week called me names in the book I won't say here. Not all of them, but some of them. So I just wanted to bring up that Facebook page and just mention that, you know, there's all this talk about Bennell, you know, being the worst school in the district, and you can't blame all that on Jerry. It's a community, and it's a culture, unfortunately, because I'm a music person and I'm an artist. There's a culture in the town that I don't know what to say. I mean, I'm probably going to really offend some people, but when the community is bringing their children to school in their jammies, we got to look at that. And when I'm going to say it again, when we have an assistant principal who lives in that community across the school, that's a big deal.
Hi, my name is John Chambers, Mary's husband, and I've been substituting teaching at the high school for like the last 4 years on a program called the Twilight Program, and it's for struggling boys. And the common denominator for that program, I've noticed, is a lack of male role models. All those kids that struggle have no real male to look up to. In real simple terms, I can't talk about what people already said about Jerry. You have one right there for a community I think needs positive male role models. And I think you should think about that.
I'll make it short. My name is Denise Babson, and I really wish the board would reconsidering their decision on Jure OConnor. Jure does a wonderful job. His heart is with the staff, and not only the parents, but with the children. I have 2 children who go to Bennington Elementary School, and they love Jure. Every holiday, my boys always say, Mom, we need to go to the store to buy our teacher something, and we need to buy something special for Mr. OConnor, because he rocks. I support Jure OConnor 100%. He is the heart of the school, and I have a child who struggles on going to school and struggles academically, but Jure helped support my child's needs. He spoke with him and let my child know everything is going to be okay. Jure even notices that the days my son goes right in, and he'll say, Mr. Babson, look at you, you're doing a great job. And that makes my child feel good about himself. And Jure also talked about with myself about the Seedlings program, because one of my kids struggles. And it would be a great program for my child. So I spoke with my child about it. And he said, Mom, I want to speak to Mr. OConnor about it, because my child has the same routine every day, which helps him go to school. So he went to school the next day. He sat with Mr. OConnor, and Mr. OConnor actually sat with him and talked to him about the Seedlings program. So my son decided he'd try it. Well, it ended up being where my son has to be out by 3 o'clock because he's on that routine that he doesn't like to be at school any longer than he has to. So Jure seen he was struggling and said he wanted to help my child with his struggles. So he said, what we'll do is, instead of having your son stay after with the Seedlings, we will have one of the tutors, come and work with your child from 2:30 to 3 to help my son get extra support in his academics that he needs. So I really wish you would reconsider on keeping Jerry at the Bennington Elementary School. We need him for our children. As a parent, with my 2 children in that school, I have a child that does struggle, and Miss Nancy and Mr. O'Connor have to have him sit in a chair every morning at the front and lock the doors so he can't leave. And my son will stay there and work with Mr. O'Connor, and it makes him feel like he has a better day as long as he's there with Jerry. And I think it's going to be a hard decision if you take him from our school, and these kids are going to be really hurt because Jerry's heart is in that school with these children. The things I've seen Jerry do, the activities he does with these kids, he don't sit there and say, oh, it's 7 o'clock, it's time for you guys to pack up and leave. He waits till the kids are done doing what they need to do. So I really wish you could reconsider and keep Jerry, because we need Jerry at Bennington Elementary.
I'm here on a very personal level. I'm not going to reiterate everything that everybody said. My first question for all of you. I want to know which one of you will give me your personal cell phone number like I have Sherry's about my son who has ADHD, sensory processing disorder, and anxiety. Kindergarten, it was clear he had issues. From kindergarten to mid-first grade, Jerry has made sure he went to recess with my son each and every day. Because my son got violent, he got hurt, triggered. He has several triggers. I guarantee you Jerry can tell you every single one of them. And he knows how to de-escalate my son, as well as Nancy. Not many of us know how to do that. My son blacks out. He doesn't remember getting in trouble. His doctor said, it's amazing that you have the support at that school, that you do. Because that school is not known for that. And that is a fact. We all know that. But I'd like to know which one of you is going to start going out in my son's recesses to help him function if he gets hurt and he doesn't lash out. I want to know which one of you are going to have lunch with him when he decides he can't handle the lunchroom because he's getting better at understanding what he can't handle, and let you sit in a room with him like my son sits with Jerry and has lunch with Jerry, and that's a treat for him. I want to know which one of you, when he doesn't think he can handle recess today, is going to play board games with him. I just found that out yesterday from my son when we had the delay. I had an interview for a job. Miss Nancy met me outside to grab my son early so I could actually make the interview for 9 o'clock. And he says, I can't wait to go in early. Maybe Mr. O'Connor is going to play board games with me again because, and I said, he plays board games with you? He says, yes, when I can't handle recess, because I've learned not to go outside when I can't handle it. I don't want to get frustrated and lose my temper. Mr. O'Connor will play games with me instead. I want to know who's going to meet me at the door every morning and let me know how my son's doing, whether it's positive or negative. I want to know which one of you can take that on. Because as well as everything else that everyone has stated that he has done, he is one of the main reasons, as well as the teacher. Mr. C is here, my son's teacher actually, and Miss Nancy. Each teacher we've had each year has been a godsend because they've been wonderful with his disorders because I didn't even understand them. I have a 22-year-old and an 8-year-old. My 22-year-old did not have any of this. I was in over my head with him. My 23-year-old's a girl. My son, I don't care who says boys are easier, you're wrong. You're so wrong. My daughter she's an honor student at Siena College, and my son was not even able to stay in school. I was getting called almost every week by one of them. He's a danger to himself and others. We can't get him to de-escalate. We've had to restrain him. He picked up a chair. There's not even a chair in this room that heavy in Mr. O'Connor's office and threw it at poor Miss Nancy and almost hit her in the head with it. That's how hard he threw. And did they tell me I was hopeless? No. I'm the one who felt hopeless. Jerry sat down with me, I can't tell you how many meetings, and Miss Nancy together. They both did, and told me this is not the end of the line. There's hope. There are things that we're going to do. He's never had to be on an IEP plan. He's never had a 504 plan. He is still mainstreamed, and he has not been violent this year. Since the beginning of the year. Sorry, Mr. C. It wasn't true. But that was not their fault. It was mine. I don't like giving my child medication. I gave him all natural alternatives from Spice and Nice, and I did it at the beginning of this year too to see if he could cope, because they said maturity helps with this. But I think he just has too many compounded disorders. And instead of telling me, advising me against it, they said, we'll work with it and see how he does, and then we'll talk. And it was my decision to put him back on. He's on the lowest dose, he's functioning, and if it wasn't for Jerry, I would not keep my kid there. He's what makes me feel comfortable and safe bringing my son there, because he's checking in on him every single day. He's telling me the difference in my child during the day, because obviously my child, it's a stimulation, an environmental based disorder. That's not how he acts at home. I don't see these things. And I didn't know how to handle it. I bought books. He's been to occupational therapy 3 times a week, pediatrician 2 times a week, and the people that made me feel the best about it were the teachers and the behavioral specialist and the guidance counselor and Jerry at Bennell. And if he's not going to be, and I don't know, maybe you guys recognize my letter was in the banner, and it wasn't even intentional. I purely thought that maybe they would perhaps forward it to you guys. Not at all did I want it in the banner. Did not want that. But my point is, I honestly am not comfortable leaving this room and keeping my son enrolled at Bennell if I'm not getting someone's phone number, and you're going to be just as accountable for my son as Jerry's.
So this is what I'm going to say. So we had allotted half an hour for public comments. We've now been more than an hour. So because we have an hour and a half, because we have such a full agenda still to get to, what I would say is there are a few different options here. There's a process for written comments to the board that's outlined in one of the policies that can be found. Certainly, I can be reached via email. And there's always next meeting as well. Sure.
I'm not a resident here, so I don't have it.
Okay. Yes, maybe after. Can you grab it after the meeting, please? Okay. It's so what I'm going to ask is that, yeah, and in fact, maybe it looks like Jody's passing around a sign-up sheet, which would be fine. We do have to. We're going to cease public comments at this point. We're going to move on to the rest of our agenda. We will. Jody's circulating a piece of paper for us to put down email addresses if we so choose. I will certainly put mine down. If anyone wants to copy it, feel free.
I'm sorry, there's a question, not so much a comment. I think it's important to try to understand the theme of the conversation tonight has clearly been reconsideration. And I'd like to educate myself, Eric White, Bennington, Vermont. I'd like to understand if there is in fact a process for reconsideration. It's clear and obvious.
Is there hope?
May I ask?
So the process for reconsideration is that one of the people who voted in favor of the motion to not renew the contract would need to make a motion for reconsideration.
So that's in fact the process. And that can happen at any board meeting before the.
It can happen right now.
It could happen tonight. So someone can make a motion for reconsideration. You can obviously because
She can't. She just got elected, but the rest of them can.
No, I can't. I can't.
Who can and who can't make a motion for Jerry's reconsideration?
The 4 people who can make a motion for Jerry's reconsideration would be Dan Monk, Jill Sikora, myself, and Jackie Kelly.
And for the record, I want to be clear that no one's making that motion.
We have a executive session scheduled for after this meeting.
We do? It's not on here.
It is on the agenda.
It is on the agenda.
Oh, it's on the new one?
Item 13.
Does it have to be executive
I only
session?
have up to item 12.
Does it have to be
There's a
executive session
13.
to make a motion? And
Oh, no, we
and
can't
revote?
make the motion in executive session.
Oh,
We have to
I think it's important for the public to understand, including myself, what the process is and who on the board is making this decision. This isn't a vocal minority, which seems to be the consensus of some of the board members. This is your community.
And I've answered the question. So the process for reconsideration is just as I just described. And at this point, I'm not hearing anyone on the board.
No motions to
making a motion
reconsider them. Unless some discussion comes up, as I heard from Dan Monks in executive session. Dan?
It's conceivable. I can't tell you what other board members are thinking.
we have an executive session.
And to be clear, that reconsideration could happen anytime between now and when? When is Jerry's termination official?
At the end of June 30th, yes.
Anytime between now and June 30th, a board motion by a member could be, there could be a motion to reconsider. True?
Mr. White, I can
Very good.
assure you I will be bringing it up in executive session
Perfect.
this evening.
Thank you.
Inviting Vic Milani to have the floor to give an update on safety and security protocol and initiatives. Give me my paper, man.
Thank you. If I could ask you to refer in your packet to the handout that's entitled School Board Update on Safety and Security Protocol and Initiatives. About 14 months ago,
Vic, I think they need to go to the microphone. Or pull the microphone over to you.
Chris, can we have a 5-minute break?
Yeah, sure. Clarification, if you were a speaker and you hadn't signed up, could you give your name to Richard over here so he can put you in the record?
Thanks.
Because we had, the last few speakers did not sign up, and he needs to put your name on the record.
And we've had a board member request a 5-minute break, so Vic, before we get on board, we'll take that 5-minute break.
That's why I passed that to you.
Vic Milani to the floor to give us the update on safety and security protocol, please.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure again to speak to you regarding safety and security in the SVSU district. About 14 months ago, our superintendent had the intuition to initiate a proactive approach to address security and safety protocol and procedures in the district. I was fortunate that he asked me if I'd be willing to assume the role as safety coordinator for the district, so together we could move forward and develop these protocols and procedures to make sure that we stayed ahead of the curve and were proactive in security and safety. What I'd like to do tonight is report to you the accomplishments of what we've done in the past 14 months. So again, you can realize the efforts that went into this, the collaboration with our community partners, and certainly I'll address that and thank them for their efforts as we move through this presentation. So referring to that handout, the first thing that we knew that was essential for us to do is to conduct building safety assessments of all the buildings in the SVSU district. And we really concentrated on three areas of safety. The first being the entryways, the second being the communication systems, and the third being camera monitoring. So focusing on the BSD schools, we were very happy with what we saw as far as the entryways. They were fob accessed. They had airphones where the person who was responsible for allowing people access to the building were able to not only see them, but communicate with them as to their reason for entry, and then make a decision as to whether or not it was appropriate to allow them access. The next area that we really looked at that we did have some issues with were the camera monitoring. Molly Stark has cameras, both interior and exterior, but together, Principal Mugis and my team, as well as the technology persons that visited the school, determined that we would probably be advantageous for us to have 8 additional cameras. So we did request that, we did recommend that, and my information is that it's been included in the budget. So again, Molly Stark should be receiving an additional 8 cameras to be able to observe areas of the school that might have formerly been blind spots. So again, one of the things that we like to be able to do is say that we can monitor the entire building and not have any blind spots should there be an occurrence that we want to view in an archive fashion. Monument, we found an additional 2 cameras would be necessary, and working with Principal Cawley, we saw that Monument, again, the entry system was fine, the telecommunication system was fine. So in Molly Stark, one other area that we were concerned about is that we have an early education program at Molly Stark, and we had an occurrence where during a lockdown drill, people were trying to enter the campus. And essentially we want to discourage that from occurring because it does present obviously a safety concern. So another proposal that we made together with Principal Mugis, as we looked around the building, we determined that it would be advantageous to have some blue strobe lights with associated signage to indicate if those strobes were flashing that people were not to enter the campus. And again, I think that's been included in the budget as well. I talked to Mr. Prue about that. We have designated locations for those strobes. So I think this coming year, we should see improvements, again, in camera coverage, both in Molly Stark and Monument, and also those strobe lights being installed at Molly Stark. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, one of the things that I was concerned about is formalized training for these persons that I mentioned in all of our schools that are responsible for determining is a person appropriate to enter into the school. And in order to make that determination, there was certainly some training that would be necessary. So again, I developed a full-day training for all of the reception and secretarial staff who are responsible for determining access to the buildings. We developed, as part of that training, 19 video scenarios for them to view and critique and discuss. And then there was teaching modules associated with each of those. Certainly looked at what constitutes suspicious activity, what constitutes a good physical description that certainly would assist the police should there be an incident where we have to try and locate and apprehend a perpetrator. We also looked at issues of how we deal with emotions from a crying person to outbursts to people who were displaying violent behavior. I'm happy to say that we had one session of that training at the end of January. We had 26 participants from all schools from the district. The feedback from the training was excellent. In fact, our staff is asking for more training, and I'll touch on that at the end of the presentation. I'm happy to say we're doing one more session of that training tomorrow. And that is a full day of training starting at 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. And that training then will allow the remainder of people in our district who have that responsibility of allowing people access to the building to be trained as a result. So again, that should assist us in making us feel more confident and comfortable that anybody who was allowed entry into the schools hopefully will be an appropriate person. Moving on to the third item on the agenda, one of the tasks that was essential for us as we embarked on this adventure was to develop an emergency operation plan for each school within the district. The superintendent had given me a directive that he wanted that emergency operation plan in place for each school by opening of school on September 1st of last year. We had 9 months to do that. I have to say that the principals were super cooperative. I spent many hours in each of the schools working with the principals and the administrative staff, as well as Jerry Prue, in doing these assessments and compiling these plans. In addition to that, any emergency operation plan that's effective has to involve our community partners. And in the case of all of the BSD schools, the law enforcement partner is obviously the Bennington Police Department. Worked very closely with Chief Doucette and all of the members of the Bennington Police Department in collaborating and talking about these plans, because they are going to be the primary law enforcement agency responding to any of the BSD schools should there be an emergency. These emergency operation plans had to include a protocol for identified high and medium risk threats and hazards. So we had to look at all possible risks and hazards. We had to then identify them as being low, medium, or high risk. If they were medium or high risk, we had to include a protocol in the emergency operation plan. In addition to that, we had to consider other types of emergency situations, such as a lockdown, shelter in place, stage 1 to 3 evacuation, stage 1 being a fire drill, stage 2 being a prolonged on-site evacuation, and stage 3 being an off-site evacuation, identifying a reunification site that that school would evacuate to should they have to be off the school campus for an extended period of time. So those are all in place. Each principal is the incident commander of their individual school and is responsible for maintaining that emergency operation plan that is dynamic, that will continue to change, will continue to be evaluated by the safety team at each school. And we collaborate, I collaborate with the safety teams and the incident commanders to make sure that those emergency operation plans are up to date and current. Moving on to the next point, one of our challenges was when we first began to look at these buildings, we saw that some of our buildings, the perimeter was not secure during the school day. And that was a real concern to us. We wanted to be able to say that during the school day, when our students are in our respective schools, that we have a secure perimeter, meaning that all of the exterior doors would be locked and we would control entry by the methods that we talked about a few minutes ago with our now trained staff. I'm happy to say we can say tonight with certainty that every SVSU student-occupied building now has a secure perimeter with monitored entry and trained personnel going to be allowing access to those buildings. So that is a major step for us in ensuring safety and security of our students and our staff within those buildings during the school day. Moving on to the next point, we have asked, and the superintendent has certainly authorized funds to be expended to ensure a police presence at schools within the district. At the high school level, our security management team that consists of 3 individuals, of which I am one. We carry radios that can communicate directly with the police, Bennington Police Dispatch, as well as individual officers. So if we have a need to contact the police, if they're not on campus, we can do that instantaneously, communicate with them as far as what the nature of the emergency is, communicate with Bennington Dispatch should we need additional services, whether it be fire or EMS. So that has also been something that we were able to accomplish within the last few months. We now have, for the budget next year, a new entry system called a Denikit, and that is referred to as a visitor substitute monitoring identification system. And just to give you the highlights of that particular system, it was piloted this year by funds that were allowed us to purchase it this year and pilot it at the high school. So we have it in place this year. We've invited the principals from the other SVSU schools to come and bring their secretarial and reception staff to see how that system works. Well, what it is essentially is a touchscreen computer. So once somebody is allowed access, again, our reception or secretarial staff deeming that's an appropriate person, they would come to the entryway. There would be this touchscreen computer. They would either, let's assume it's a visitor, they would tap visitor, they would type in information, name, who they want to see, and what would happen is it would print out a visitor tag. And that visitor identification tag would be issued by the receptionist or secretary. It would be carried in a lanyard, in a plastic carrier around their neck, together with emergency instructions that are also included in that lanyard. What that does is gives us a running record of who is in the building at any one time. And should there be an incident, one of the things that we have to do is account for all persons present. So it's essential that we have that log as to who's in the building. In addition, this identification tag also contains a photo of the visitor. We can follow the same practice for substitutes who are coming into the building to obviously cover classes, but for teachers that may not be in attendance. The system also allows us to print what are called tardy passes. So as students arrive tardy, they would follow the same procedure come up to that touch screen. They would indicate that they are a student, that they're requesting a tardy pass. It would print out the date and time, and again, give us a running log of that. That student would present the tardy pass to their instructor upon going to the class. Same kind of thing. First, at the end of the day, should it be an early dismissal, a student has a doctor's appointment, an appointment at a college, they have permission to leave, they would again approach that screen and it would print out an early dismissal pass. Again, the important thing for us is at any one time, we now know if we had to account for everybody present, that student is no longer in attendance for the day, and we have a running record of that. So the district has provided funds in the budget, so we expect that each SVSU school will have that system in place next academic year, and that is certainly a recommended practice nationwide to be able to control safety and security as to who's in your building at any one time. The next item talks about a device that you may or may not be familiar with called an AED. It stands for Automatic External Defibrillator. We know that this is a device that can certainly save lives. We, this summer, had a visit from the liaison to the Agency of Education who oversees safety in the state of Vermont. And the recommendation he made to us is that he felt it would be certainly beneficial to have each one of our schools have one of these AED devices. In the case of elementary schools, we would have both adult pads and pediatric pads, which would allow that device to be used either on students or adults in the building. I learned today, as a matter of fact, that monies have been appropriated and funds have been located this year, I'm told, to make that purchase. So thank you, Reine, for making that happen. Certainly, the sooner we have these devices in the building, again, we satisfied the recommendation of the state liaison, and again, it's more comforting for us to know that we would have these devices in each of our buildings. Last point on the first page talks about the fact that we, at the district level, have what's called the SVSU Safety Committee. We meet at least every other month to talk about safety issues district-wide. Each school, under the direction of their incident commander, the principal does have their own safety team. They bring things to me or to our SVSU Safety Committee that we consider as a district and what action we want to take. In addition, any trainings that I develop, any new initiatives that I feel are appropriate for us to consider as a district, I bring to the SVSU committee to discuss for them to grant approval for us to move forward. Moving on to the second page, we want to talk about the fact that it is very important, as I mentioned earlier, for our safety teams to collaborate with their community partners. I can tell you, just as an example, today we had a meeting at the high school. In attendance was the superintendent, and myself, and the administrators of the high school, and Chief Doucette of the Bennington Police Department conducted an assessment that is now mandated by Rebecca Holcomb of the Agency of Education for every school in the state of Vermont, an assessment that has got to be completed by law enforcement by March 30th and submitted to them for evaluation. I'm pleased to say that all of the questions on the survey, we were right on target. So we felt very good as a result of seeing that survey and knowing that we are certainly where we should be, and certainly beyond that by taking this proactive approach that we considered 14 months ago. We'll be continuing these assessments Another point that I want to make is that, in fact, we have one for another district school, Shaftesbury, on Monday, and that will involve the state police, who is the law enforcement agency that would have jurisdiction over Shaftesbury. But what we're doing to be collaborative is we're having Chief Doucette from the Bennington Police Department attend that as well. Because in reality, should there be an emergency situation in Shaftesbury or at Monument Elementary, we're going to have multiple law enforcement agencies involved. So even if it's at Monument, we're going to have Bennington Police certainly, but are we going to have the state police? Are we going to have Bennington County Sheriff? Absolutely. If there is an event that would be a tragic event similar to the ones that we've been hearing about over the last few months, and some of them occurring in Vermont, certainly all law enforcement agencies rally to that type of emergency situation. So we want everybody to be on the same page. So the superintendent and I have discussed this, and we've decided that when we have these meetings, we're going to bring as many law enforcement agencies as possible so we all can exchange ideas and know exactly what our roles will be should an event like this transpire. Next point talks about the ability for us to issue what are called orders of no trespass. We do this from time to time at the high school. What happens is we deem a person is inappropriate for entry onto our campus for various reasons. What the administration can do is they can issue this order of no trespass, then that we would give to law enforcement to serve on the individual named on the order. That order would warn that individual that if they were to enter the campus, they would be subjected to a criminal charge. The only way they could enter onto the campus is by first notifying law enforcement, the administration of the school where they want to enter, and get their permission to do that if the trespass order is in place. So again, we have done that on occasion, and again, that serves formal notice on an individual. They're not an appropriate person at this time to enter our campus and subject to criminal charge should they violate that order. Moving on, it is mandated by statute and by the Agency of Education that each year we practice drills. And there are two types of drills that are mandated for us to practice. One being what's called the Stage 1 egress, which is essentially the fire drill that all of us are familiar with, and the second being the lockdown. The specifications are that during the month of September, we have to do both an evacuation, Stage 1, and also a lockdown. And then we begin with egress in the month of October. So by the time we go through the school year, we've practiced 6 Stage 1 egress and 5 lockdowns. What we attempt to do, and encourage all of our SVSU schools to do, we ask the incident commanders to involve our community partners in these drills. So our community partners are more than willing to participate in the fire egress and also the lockdown containments. And again, it is good for us to continue to collaborate with them. The other thing that's so important is that we would ask each school to do this different times of the day, different days of the week, because we want to present and we want to look at, you know, if we have lunchtime and there's a containment or a fire drill, how does that look as compared to a time of the day where there are no lunches, or recesses or no recesses. So again, as a district, we've been trying to do that to bring as many different scenarios into these types of drills that we can. And again, the reports I'm receiving are highly favorable. Our community partners are very pleased to be asked to participate in these. So again, they get some practice as to what they would do if this were a real situation. So we're going to continue to move forward and do that. Another area that we were very concerned about is that if there is an event in a school and a lockdown is called, if there is an unoccupied room where the interior door is left unlocked, the way our schools were designed, they have interior doors that allow access from classroom to classroom. So if somebody should leave their room and not lock the door, and a person with ill intent or even a shooter enters that building, they would have access to multiple classrooms, even if we're in lockdown mode, if they can access one unlocked door. So we've been trying to change the culture here, and we've been saying this over and over again, that certainly you don't want to be the one to leave your door unlocked as a faculty member when you go to make those copies. And unfortunately, this is the time that an intruder is in the building, we have to go in lockdown because you could be responsible for injuries and even fatalities by failing to lock that door. And really, it's just a matter of changing habit. We leave our homes, we lock our doors. We leave our cars, we lock the cars. So we've got to get in the habit, even if we're going to the restroom as a faculty or a staff member, we're going to make a copy, we've got to make sure that we lock those doors, because we don't want to allow anybody access to those additional classrooms should we be into a lockdown. So I have to report that the principals have been telling me that, again, faculty and staff are adhering to that directive. So we're pleased about that. Just to tell you where we're going this year, I have developed a new training for elementary school students for school bus safety. And in talking to Mike Gardner, who represents Dufort Transportation, there have been in the past some training as far as emergency evacuation of buses. But has there been training related to safety on the bus? What should a student be doing at the bus stop? What shouldn't a student be doing? How do we approach the bus? What do we do while we're riding the bus? What do we do when we're exiting the bus? I've designed this as an interactive training where we're actually going to bring buses and drivers to each school. We might determine, and this would be up to the incident commander, the principal of the school, are we going to do it by grade, how many students we're going to do at any one time. But we're going to have this actually hands-on training and talk to them about safety on the school bus. Parents are going to get letters in this regard telling them we're going to be conducting this training. We're also going to be talking to them about some new initiatives that Dufort Transportation has instituted. Namely, there are cameras for both video and sound on the buses now. In addition to that, buses are GPS tracked, so we can tell at any one time where a bus is and where a bus has been. So again, these are all new initiatives to ensure the safety and security of our students as they ride buses to school. And certainly at the bus stop, this is still a school site. While they're on the bus, this is still a school site. So we have a responsibility, both moral and legally, to conduct this type of training. The second type of training that I'm working on, one of the comments that we received from this training that I mentioned to you a little while ago regarding to these front desk personnel as far as safety and security, they told us everybody should have this training. All the faculty and staff should have this training. Well, we don't feel it's particularly appropriate for all faculty and staff to have that, but they do have to have some training in recognizing what constitutes a threat, what are different categories of threats, and how do you assess and evaluate those threats. And I'm developing that training right now. What's the way that's going to be delivered? It'll be a 1-hour presentation. I will go to each respective school in the district, and it will be during a faculty meeting. It will take the place of a faculty meeting 1 month. They'll get handouts. they'll receive this training, and also this is a recommended training by the NFPA that relates to active shooter and hostile event preparedness and response training. So that's kind of what we've done this year. That's kind of what we're envisioning so far as we move forward. Certainly, we're continuing to look at these emergency operation plans, continue to revise them and update them with the cooperation of the individual incident command principals. I welcome you as a school board to bring forward to either the superintendent or myself any concerns, any suggestions that you have. We certainly extend that invitation to our entire SVSU district community. So again, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to entertain. Yes, ma'am.
Speaking as a parent first, board member second, last week it came to my attention I had to have a transportation change for my son. So this falls into a tech question and a safety question simultaneously, and I'm not sure that you can fully answer this for me.
I'll do the best I can.
But I called the school and I left a message the way I typically do that there was a transportation change. And it was, unbeknownst to me, the phone lines and internet were down. And so subsequently, my son's transportation did not change through no fault of the staff, but because they never got the message, which for me is fine because I'm a stay-at-home, I work from home, so I was able to drop what I was doing and get down to the school to come and grab him. My question is, in a nutshell, from a tech and security standpoint, I found out that the staff isn't able to call out, and we're not getting our messages in when the internet is down. It's affecting both phone and internet, which to me was really upsetting because if something major had been happening, I wouldn't have been able to communicate, nor could they have with me. And although they all have their own cell phones, the staff, we all know in Vermont that our service is spotty for most of us.
I can address that. I was going to bring it up in superintendent's report.
So I'm just wondering if that gap has been filled.
So the gap has been on. One thing so Fairpoint Communication, which their service went out, and we thought we had redundancy with Comcast, and
Turns out there wasn't.
Turns out, no, it was not all operating. Our phone systems are what's called voice over internet, which is, so what happens when the internet goes out, that goes out. So these are the two things that we have done to make sure that this will not happen again. So we have now, Fairpoint is still our primary carrier, and they, after we had made complaints to Vermont Public Safety Commission, it has been rectified, but we were experiencing spot outages and then complete outages over a 2-week period, and it wasn't just us.
Right.
So we now have a second system, which is at a cost of $17,000 through SovereignNet, and it's not just BSD, which will be a redundancy system. So if one goes out, that will be there. And the other thing we did is we purchased old-style telephones.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Did we go for landlines?
Because what we've learned is every building, every office has a fax line, which is a copper wire, rather regular phone line. So if this happens and there's a double failure again, that the internet goes out, even the secondary goes out, we'll be able to instruct the principals in each building to unplug your fax line and plug in the phone so that there will at least be a phone communication.
How will you get that message to them?
If we have cell phones of every principal, or if it gets to that point, there'd be a tech person going there to do it if we know that that outage is out there. So in response to how, we kept being told by Fairpoint that the internet would be back up the next day, and then it'd come up partly, and then so that's when we made the tech office made the switch, or attempted to make the switch to Comcast. That's when they discovered that failure, and so we will have a redundant system.
One other thing, I'd like to compliment the principals, the BSD principals, because knowing that this condition existed, what did they do? They distributed their handheld radios throughout the building. So again, to at least give some communication between them and the teachers should there be an emergency. Because again, unfortunately, the PA systems were down in the building as well. So again, we certainly, have, as Mr. Koch said, have hopefully rectified the problem, but you know, we've got to think on our feet. There's always going to be things happening that, you know, we've got to respond to. We've got to use good common sense and judgment, and I have every faith in the 3 incident commanders that are in charge of the BSD schools to be able to make those types of decisions.
My question is on the police presence at individual schools. We have them in all our elementary schools.
No.
Mr. Colkeen can.
You just have police presence in BSD at this time. They don't have enough officers to go around.
And we have looked at using sheriffs.
We have not at this time. Well, based on the experience of the high school, I don't believe that that's an option at this time. For the contracted rate.
Oh. And if we ever get them, if they ever have enough police officers to do this, will they be carrying firearm?
Oh, the police, law enforcement always carry firearms. So the police that do have a presence in our schools are armed, yes.
So what we have in BSD now is really just detail. So when an officer is available, the detail officer there. The school resource officer is it is not in the town budget for next year. It's in our budget, but it's not in the town budget for a school resource officer. So even if they had an officer available who went through the SRO training and then was willing to do it, it's not in their budget any longer. So our budget supports the detail officers. The reason they have to put it in their budget, if you remember, because it's a year round, the officer's a year-round employee, so they have to put their share in it, and it's my understanding it's no longer in the town budget.
I have to say that I can speak very, very well as far as how that detail situation has been working. Certainly, we're not going to share the hours and so forth because that's variable. But again, we have the same kind of situation at the high school where we have officers that serve a detail. And as I say, the cooperation and collaboration between us as the security force and the police department is outstanding. So it's working well.
I know, but my concern is that if there is an incident in one of the buildings and we don't have a resource officer available at that time, there should be, and I don't want to arm teachers and I don't want to arm principals, believe me. But I would in today's world, and it's not when it's going to happen, it's not if it's going to happen, it's going to be when it's going to happen. I just don't want to see kids get hurt and faculty get hurt, and
Just to respond to that, in other parts of the country, there have been moves in that direction. And I want to say that we've been looking into that. We've consulted with our attorney for the district. We've consulted with the state's attorney's office as far as legislation that would allow for that. Right now, Vermont law is a little vague as to the ability of other than law enforcement to possess firearms on school property. But we have been evaluating that. We have been looking at that. But there's a lot of questions to be answered, a lot of concerns to be addressed, and a lot more facts that we would need. But certainly, it is something that we're evaluating.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Have parents been notified of the redundancy for the telephone?
Yeah, that's just been put in place.
I only happen to know because there was a transportation issue.
Right, so maybe we could put something out to parents who are not watching.
Well, all systems are up and running now, or the main phone system and internet is up and running.
Question?
And they wouldn't know. Yes. They wouldn't know that it's really like a behind the scene thing. The switch would be flipped, is my understanding, so that wouldn't it wouldn't interrupt, unless we had to go to that third option, and there's only one landline in the building, but as far as the 2 internet options, it wouldn't make any difference if they called in.
I just wanted to continue what Jackie was saying about resource officers, and I'm wondering how they're presently being used. In my experience in the BSD, they were quite helpful. We always think of gunmen, but we often have a lot of mentally unstable
They can't hear you.
or families or individuals under the influence entering schools. And I know in situations you would just call the police, but do we have a resource officer that can kind of rove around to check in on the schools, or are they an as-needed basis?
We do. So as I said, the only school that is currently having detail officers is Bennington Elementary. So.
And the town removed it from the budget.
Any other questions for Mr. Maloney? Great, Dick, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 6. Was the treasurer's, several treasurer's reports.
I move that we accept them.
Thank you. So I have a motion to accept. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
All right. Any discussion about accepting those treasurer's reports? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the treasurer's reports, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. Jim, can you please speak to the donation for the instrument program at Molly?
No, Renee.
Oh, please,
going to
Renee,
handle
thank
that.
you.
Yep.
There was $1,000 donated to the instrumental music program specifically for Molly Stark to be used to either repair instruments or purchase new ones just to support the program.
Great. And do we have is this someone want to be named as the beneficiary or no?
Sure.
Jackie.
Jackie Kelly,
Thank
my
you,
goodness.
Jackie.
Well, thank you very much, Jackie Kelly. Could we please empower our clerk to write a letter of thank you to this Jackie Kelly person?
Whoever this person may be.
Just gonna write it on.
Thank you very much, Jackie. And then, Jim,
It's not her first year doing it.
items C and D. The People's
We gotta
Banks-
accept it.
Oh, could I
I'm
have
making a motion that we accept
Second.
the donation that
Thank you.
Jackie Kelly gave to the,
Thank you. Is there any
music
discussion about
department.
accepting this donation? Very good. So all those in favor of accepting Jackie's very generous donation, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Very good. Thank you, Jackie.
And Renee's going to handle the next 2.
All right, take it away, Renee.
The student activity account for Molly Stark, we needed to update the signers because there's a change in administration. The bank that is currently holding the account is People's United Bank, and they have a procedure that requires the board to authorize the chair to accept a resolution or act on the resolution in order, so the board is recognizing the change in signers. So with the board authorizing the chair to do that, if you wanted to come in, it actually has to be notarized, so I can't have you sign it tonight unless somebody has a notary here to do it.
Oh, I'm a notary.
Are you?
All right.
Mine expired.
Are you really?
Yes.
All right.
I just don't have my stamp with me.
Can we stamp it after?
Let's ask the notary. Can we stamp
Are
it
we
after?
allowed to stamp it after?
You don't actually
probably
have
don't
to have a
even need to have a
stamp.
stamp.
Okay,
but-
great. So what could you give us language for a motion, Renee, so we're doing it properly?
To accept the resolution for the student activities account, to change the signers to the current administration, which would include Dr. Mujitz, Kim Tenner, Sandy Mitchell, who is the secretary here, and they also require that the treasurer be on as well, so
Okay.
Tim Bluto.
So could someone make that motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Jackie. Could I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion about this? Very good. All those in favor of empowering the chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. So I will do that now, and then Jackie Prue can sign that. Thank you. Thanks. And then the last one, Renee, procedure for executing contracts.
The way that statute currently reads is that the chair of the school board has the authority to sign contracts. The only other person or persons that would have authority is somebody who have been recognized and recorded in the minutes. You know, any large purchase or contract, you know, if we're going out to bid, will be brought to the board. But purchase orders are actually considered a form of contract on which my signature appears on them. So to make sure we're adhering to statute, what I would ask if the board would grant the authority to the superintendent or his designee to execute contracts on
And
behalf
this
of the
came with the
school district.
recommendation from our auditors, so,
Auditors and the AOE.
and the AOE.
So moved.
Thank you, Jackie. Could I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Meredith. Any discussion about this? Very good. So the motion on the table is to authorize the office of the superintendent or his or her designee to execute contracts on behalf of the BSD. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion carries. Great. Thank you, Renee. We have the consent agenda, but I noticed that there's something missing from the consent agenda. We had in the board packet, there was the nomination form for Michael Vecchione.
I have something, so it got posted late, though if you printed it out today, you would have it. If not, I have a hand
I
copy.
don't have it. I have an old agenda
I don't
from
have
the
it.
last
Yep.
6 weeks.
So could I have a motion to amend the consent agenda to include the nomination of Michael Vecchione? Thank you, Chayla. Could I have a second?
Excuse me. Second.
Thank you, Meredith. Any discussion about amending the consent agenda? Okay, so all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so the consent agenda has been amended to include the nomination of Michael Vecchione as the paraprofessional at Monuments. So all those in favor, could I have a motion to accept the consent agenda, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Jackie and Chayla. Any discussion? All those in favor of accepting the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And it so passes. Moving on to number 8, the educational matters. We will start with Dr. Mugitz, because we're in his house. And Principal Colley with him.
They're giving you a joint presentation.
I know Vic has left, but I want to extend our appreciation for the work and time that he's invested in securing the schools, and together with Jerry Prue responding to our needs. This is my 40th year as either a district or school leader, and I've been asked, what are some of the changes that you've seen over that 4-decade-long career? And certainly one of them is security. I grew up at a time, I was in elementary school when we did bomb drills because we were in the depths of the Cold War. So the need for lockdown drills, for instance, that emerged after the tragic incident in Columbine 19 years ago next month, has really changed schools. So one of those changes is the need for security, and we're addressing that, and I appreciate the board's support financially and investing in undertaking all efforts to increase the security. But another change that I've seen, prominent among many changes, but is not just the focus on academics. There's always been a focus on academics, but the high stakes accountability that is associated with statewide assessments, and they are often limited to certain areas of the curriculum, principally math and literacy, often at the expense or benign neglect of others. I'm appreciative, I know Donna and Edie are also, of the district's interest and commitment to embrace programs that acknowledge that there's more than just academics that go on in the school. And this is the second year that the SVSU and BSD in particular are involved with looking at 3 different points: academics, social skills, and behavior. The fact that we have a multi-tiered system responding to the needs of kids, not just in academics, but in behavior and social elements, is very, very important. This is at a time when many districts submerge those elements and go all in on simply academics, and more unfortunate, go all in on academics that are tested. If it's not tested, it's discounted. So what we're going to talk about tonight are those 2 areas that extend our focus on academics, but also ensure that we're responding to the social and behavior needs of our learners. And I'm going to talk briefly about Connect with Kids, And Donna is going to talk about another program that involves staff collecting data, using that data, converting it into informed decision-making. And that's with the student risk scale score, both internal and external points of view. So what I'd like to do is give you some background, and that is we have Connect with Kids at the elementary level throughout the BSD. This is a study from the What Works Clearinghouse, which is an unbiased, scholarly program that assesses and studies many different things that are included in schools. And this is their summary of evidence for this intervention, Connect with Kids. Connect with Kids is a program that has 8 units. Each of those 8 units involve 3 character traits. It's delivered in a venue that is very compatible with the interests of kids. Videos that are shared, they're accompanied with teacher manuals, support materials. They're intended to stimulate discussion. So for instance, when I was observing a 5th grade class, they were doing their Connect with Kids video. It was on the subject of cooperation. And the videos are often peer related. That is, that they're of elementary or middle school age children who are involved in each of these videos. So the teachers can register and record these videos. It's like a social curriculum. It's an acknowledgement that, yes, math is important, literacy is important, but often the soft skills are the ones that make a difference in the success for an adult. Because when it gets down to most work environments that involve the need for collaboration, working together, whether it's on an assembly line or at IBM headquarters. So your math and your literacy skills suddenly, while they're important, are rendered less important than your ability to communicate, to cooperate, to listen, and hold competing viewpoints, to work together. So cooperation, anti-bullying, one of the other videos in the Connect with Kids program is on digital citizenship. And we had Cat TV in today here at Molly Stark, filming presentations that kids made on digital citizenship through the efforts of our librarian, Allison Hoffman. And I believe they're compiling this and converting it into a public service announcement. So it means that we're in a district where time is the most valuable commodity. Because whether we're a rich district or a poor district, we have only the same amount of time as any other district. So it's how we spend that time. And I'm very glad that I work in a district that recognizes the value of social and behavioral aspects of that whole child, that they're willing to invest the time. At a time when some schools have eliminated recess because they want to increase instructional time, seeing that as the sole leverage point of increasing academic outputs. So this is one part of that, Connect with Kids, and it is a curriculum. They're constantly increasing the reservoir of videos. They're soliciting feedback. They're trying to be contemporary and seize on emerging issues and responding by providing teachers with this video, with the accompanying activities and resources. So that's one element. Another, Donna's going to talk about with data collection, and that's the SRSSIE, the Student Risk Scaled Score, internal and external.
Thank you, Dr. Regents. And we did have this presentation prepared for the 3 principals
you are getting off easy because Edie Dunn actually had homework for you. So when she returns, which I'm hoping she'll feel better soon, when she returns, she might bring her homework for you at our next meeting. So be prepared and listen carefully. So yes, as Dr. Mugis has shared, we have Connect with Kids. We are implementing that with Fidelity in our schools. But also, we need to know if our work is working with kids. And in order to do that, a great way to do that too is to gain data, gather it, and look at it as we do our collaborative meetings. And we do that not only for English language arts, mathematics, we do that also for the emotional social component for our children. So we have what we call the Student Risk Screening Scale, SRSS, that's your acronym, i.e. internal and externalizing behaviors. And the classroom teachers complete this scale 3 times a year for the children in their classroom. And that scale incorporates behaviors such as, does a student have aggressive behavior, maybe a poor attitude, peer rejection, low achievement, maybe they're sad or depressed, all of those things. So we are looking at that data with our collaboration teams. Every time we assess children, we're looking to see if our lessons are supporting children, but now I'm going to relate it back to our comprehensive 3-tiered instruction that we use in our schools, CI3T. So we address the concerns of our children socially and emotionally in the same fashion that we address their academics in ELA or mathematics. If there is a concern and our Tier 1 intervention with Fidelity and Connect with Kids doesn't show us that we're making gains with children, we may implement Tier 2 interventions for that child. And that could be a small group of school counseling with our school counselors. That could be lunch bunch with our school counselors, focusing on the behaviors and the emotional components that we know are important for us to really focus on with those individual children. Tier 3 could incorporate individual counseling. We have mental health counselors, but this piece I think is really important because this is an opportunity now for us to work with our community partners. Not sure if anyone has ever seen this little pamphlet, but I keep it by my desk side all the time because community partners are really important for us in our schools. And we may have children who have intensive needs, and that sometimes trickles into support for families too. And so we work with our community partners such as Department of Children and Family and Services. We work with United Counseling Service. We work with our Children's Integrated Services. But within this little pamphlet, which I received a couple years ago and we did give out to our parents, there are so many community partners that we make connections with. So it's really about the whole child and their family and the community members that can help out. We do coordinated service plans for our very intensive needs children. And that brings all of our community partners, brings them into our environment. We talk about all of the supports that we want to put forth for those children and those families to help make them successful. So I'm hoping this is just a little glimpse of another piece of how we support children. I want you to look forward to the homework from Edie Dunn. And if you have any questions, we'd be pleased to answer them. Yes. Yes.
You and I worked together on CI3T for Monument School.
3 years.
3
wasn't
years.
it?
I actually just went back on my calendar to see how long ago it was, and it was, I think I had my first meeting with you March of 2016. So I know that we've been doing in our district CI3T district-wide since March of 2016, at least, because that's when I was invited. And I remember talking about Connect with Kids with our web woman, I cannot remember her name, the lady. If you don't remember it.
From the tech department?
Yeah, no, the one
Kathleen Lane.
Yes.
Thank you. Kathleen Lane.
And I remember at some point talking about Connect with Kids and discussing the program and looking through it. So when did we adopt Connect with Kids? Was it prior to CI3T and we've implemented it with CI3T?
No, actually it was from our work with Kathleen Lane. That was a component that we identified as a district that we needed to have.
Because I remember there were several programs, and we decided that Connect with Kids was the best fit for us.
And I believe this is the second year
Yes.
that we are implementing that in the classrooms.
Right.
And the nice part about it, and I can actually share, I just happen to be able to pull up, we have trends and data trends that we look at. And it's an overall school that we can look at and see if we are effective with our programs, and I can share that with you. But it is the second year, and you know, just for example, I don't know if you can see the graph, but when we implemented it, it was winter of 2016, and so we've had 4 data markers now with the SRSS, and it provides us with that really good glimpse over time. Tells us if we're effective, if we need to look at what we're doing and need to revise or replace. But we've seen some good response.
Some gains.
And it's not just one lesson a week. We have one overarching lesson, and then our teachers are committing to reinforcing these skills every day.
It was a cultural change is what we
Absolutely.
had discussed.
And there also is a parent component. So a parent can go online to our SVSU site and request an access code, and the parent can view all of the videos and look at all of the lessons that their children are seeing in school.
And just one more quick question. So the CI3T that we implemented about 2+ years ago was a nice tie-in for the PBIS program, which we had started even prior to that. How long ago was PBIS implemented?
Oh boy.
I know of like 5, 6, 7 years.
We actually started, I remember I was at Bennell, I was assistant principal, and I think it was 2010, 8?
No, 2007, 2008.
Oh, okay, there you go. It's been a long time. Yeah, and it still is going strong, and I really think that that's due to each school community understanding what their community needs. And each year, for example, the teams will get together and they might revise it, or, you know, it's kind of like a freshening up of the program. Monument, prior to me coming to Monument, they had Honey Money. Now we have Honey Drops. So it makes it exciting for the kids. It's, you know, a renewal of the program. And we have, you know, different supports for the kids. You know, we've gone from externalizing supports of items to really internalizing supports of, do you want to have lunch with me? Do you want to go and be a mentor in a younger classroom? Do you want to lead my math lesson that may have been in a younger class? Teachers will accept children in that they've had prior. So they're really internalizing behaviors that motivate children, and that's what the goal is. Yes.
And just to clarify, this, the classroom lessons, the video lessons, these would be replacing the previous second step?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Good question. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Agenda item number 9 is policies. So we need a motion to adopt number 2600, which we had warned at our December meeting. This is the superintendent evaluation, and essentially brings the timeline for evaluation in line with the contract language. So could I have a motion to adopt 2600, please?
So moved. Second.
Thank you very much. Any discussion? All those in favor of adopting 2600, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? It is adopted. Number B, motion to adopt 3200 emergency closings. This replaces the word problem with the word risk, and we warned this at our January meeting. So could I have a motion to accept 3200, please? We'll call that Prue and Sikora. Any discussion on that? Hearing none. All those in favor of adopting 3200, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That is adopted. Need a motion to adopt policy 5110, which removes the moral objections to immunization. We warned this at our December meeting. So could I have a motion to adopt 5110, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Jack Kelly. Could I have a second?
Second.
Thank you very much, Jody. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? And it is adopted. We need a motion to warn policy 4400, the safety and security of employees, which adds the word healthy to describing the overall environment within a school. So could I please have a motion to warn policy 4400? Thank you, Chayla. Could I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Merity. Any discussion about warning 4400? Hearing none, all those in favor of warning, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? And we have warned 4400. Then the last bit under policies is a request for policy on medical, dental, therapeutic permission slips for discussion and possible action. 2 regular board meetings ago, we had a member of the public come up and comment that there is not an easy online way of parents to give permission for their children to receive medical, dental, or clinical care in schools. And there was even the suggestion that it be an opt-out instead of an opt-in. The district's attorney has weighed in and saying anything regarding medical, dental, or therapeutic really does need to be an opt-in. But with that said, there's no policy that really governs permission slips, and what I had envisioned would be an easy to fill out online permission slip to accompany the paper version that would then follow a child through the elementary years, as opposed to having to do it once a year. That's my thought. If there's other discussion on that, great, and if we could have a motion to forward this to the policy committee through our policy committee rep, I would entertain that motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Jack Kelly. Thank you, Merity. Any other discussion on this?
Would this just be permissions? This would not be updated medical information, just permissions?
I think this would have to be permission slips for this policy. If we wanted to expand it and ask for amendments to other policies, that would be its own thing. Yeah, and I can't say offhand what those other policies might be at this point in terms of medical stuff.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
Well, I have a question.
Sure.
For instance, when kids move from school to school, is that changed, and would this policy go on with, it
would follow them within the district, I would
it follow
assume.
them?
I would hope so, yeah.
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 I would
Great if we
assume.
can make SVSU-wide.
Well, if it goes to the SVSU policy, it will be.
But I can't imagine it wouldn't be something a parent would have to sign off on annually. I
Right.
can't imagine it would be a one signature covering your entire education. I would
Yeah, I
assume
would
we'd
go
have to
out
sign off annually.
Yeah.
Now, Jody, were you asking like every year you have to fill out your medical
The medical
information?
card.
Is that what
Yeah.
you're
I
referring to?
I just wanted, my concern was that information changes from year to year, with little ones, and it's,
Ibuprofen or
yeah,
whatever.
it's just important to keep that up to date and,
Separate.
but the other concern about just the overall permission, that's an easy.
Yeah, that was, the specific request from 2 months ago was that permission, in this case, particularly for dental, oral screenings, could we find a way to make it easier for parents to give that permission? So,
Especially when we have an in-house dentist.
Right. So we have a motion on the floor to send to the SVSU Policy Committee a request for a policy governing online permission for dental, medical, and clinical. Any other conversation on that? Very good. So all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? No. So moved. Moving on to number 10, Superintendent's report.
first thing I wanted to discuss with you, mainly so that everyone can hear it, is snow days.
I knew this was coming up.
So, in case anyone hasn't been keeping count, we have had 8 snow days, 8 days that school was canceled. We had 1 extra day that Mount Anthony Middle School was closed because of a pipe burst. We also had a day canceled that was just an in-service day with staff. So it's 9 days that we need to make up in the calendar, plus what we're going to do with the middle school. We've had 7 delays and 1 early release. I learned today in my meeting with the Teachers Association that I have made some Greylock School, what was the Hall of Fame, because I hit the trifecta, which is 3 consecutive days, a closing, an early release, a closing, and a delay. So,
Congratulations.
yeah, I don't know if that's anything I want to be in a Hall of Fame for. But it's, and I'm hearing weather forecast for next Tuesday that I don't like. So obviously, this has a big impact on our calendar. We put 5 snow days into our calendar, which would have put the last day of school for everybody at the 22nd of June. We are now, students would go to the 27th of June, and teachers would go to the 28th of June.
I got a question. Don't we have 5 extra days other than that too?
So that's-
That we educate our students over the state?
That's where I'm going with this. And we're,
That's where we're getting to the shaving part.
I remember from last year, we
Yep.
had that 5-day buffer.
so the reason why I don't want to discuss it yet completely though is winter's not over yet.
Okay.
So-
Still March.
So the students have to get 175 days in. Either one of you seniors, by the way? It's a great year to be a senior, isn't it? So you don't have to make those days up. Where 2 years ago, there wasn't a snow day, which was probably the worst year to be a senior. So that would be the suggestion. We're going to monitor to see how much further we can scale back student days to 175 days. And if we don't have any other snow days, and I'm probably jinxing this right now by saying that, we could still go with the June 22nd dismissal for students, and they would go 177 days at that point, and the middle school would only go 176 days at that point. Need to be clear, the staff would still report. We would schedule them professional development, because for them to get paid, they got to work the amount of days that are in their contract. So, discussed it. We have monthly meetings with the union, with the association officers. That was discussion today. It's been discussed with my administrators, and we're just keeping our fingers crossed.
Did you discuss April vacation?
April vacation was up for discussion. Memorial Day was up for a discussion. At this point, the impact of this late in the year announcing that we're going to have school on those days, I think would have a huge impact on attendance. So what I said to the Teachers Association today, that's not off the table, because I can't predict
We
what will
can't
be.
predict the
Right.
rest of the month.
If we have more than 2 more snow days, then we are going to have to look at Saturdays, Memorial Day, school vacation, or applying for a waiver from the state. But if we don't use any of those days, it's unlikely they would give us a waiver, because the idea you have the opportunity to make those days up. You're choosing not to. Why would we give you a waiver? Though we are not the only school system that's in this situation. So on the superintendent listserv, there is some email chatter starting about who's going to be looking for a waiver. But I don't want to put that out there, that I don't see that as a viable option at this time, because we experienced this in the year that we had the work action here. We weren't granted a waiver then, and we had to make up some of that time during vacations and on holidays. At next month's SVSU meeting, I will present next year's calendar. By law, we have to send it to the secretary by April 1st. I will tell you the highlight is that next year the calendar has us going back before Labor Day, like we always have done, except for this school year, because of to give BSD more time for construction. So we would be starting on, the staff will report Monday, August 27th, and the first day for students would be Thursday, August 30th, and they would do 2 days, August 30th and August 31st. First 3 days of the last week of August would be staff days. And the other thing I want to mention about calendar is, remember, it's a regional calendar.
Mhm.
We meet with the Arlington superintendent and the Career Development Center superintendent and myself, because the calendar needs to be aligned with what's best for the Career Development Center, as they pull students from different districts, so that we try to align vacations. So it's aligned the best it is, considering not everybody's professional development day or student day count is the same, but we have that. I do want to go back to snow day. One thing, just what goes into me making that decision, because according to my emails, I either don't know what I'm doing, or on days that this was a tough week. This one was. So it starts around 4:30 in the morning, looking at weather reports, getting then somewhere between 4:45 and 5 o'clock, we talk to the bus company, get reports back from road crews, particularly Shaftesbury and Pownell, what's it doing there, and the camera from Woodford, and we make a decision. I have to make that decision really by 5:30 in the morning. So I don't, where was I going with this? So it's it's not an easy decision. Yeah, it looked like we could have had school on Tuesday, and maybe Wednesday we shouldn't have had school, but at 5 o'clock in the morning, what the weather forecast was and what everybody was reporting to me, you know, it was going to be fine. And what I do want to point out to people, geographically we're a big district and the roads might be wet here in Bennington, but I got 8 inches of snow up in Shaftesbury and Shaftesbury Hollow, and I got a, and it really comes down to, is the bus company feel that it's safe to put the buses on the road? And when I talk to the bus contractor and he says to me, I don't think I want to put my buses on the road this morning, I'm not going to overrule him as superintendent and say, no, I want you to run the buses this morning. We had a 1-hour delay yesterday because that's what I was getting back the report that's what the Shaftesbury road crew needed. And then at 7:20 in the morning, I got a phone call back asking for another hour. And I said, absolutely not, we can't do it by that point. You know, I'd be having students out on the bus stop. That's kind of what goes into it. It's not an exact science, just like, you know, I did have somebody say to me, everybody is a meteorologist the next day. What else I wanted to calendar? Some of you did ask us, the Vermont School Board Association sent out an email on a grant-funded community engagement grant. So we are going to send a representative, probably Donna Leap, to the April 14th workshop on that to see what is the whole scope of that grant and is it viable for us. I want to point out there's only 3 grants in the entire state, though we do seem that we meet some of those criteria, so we are going to go look to that. You know, you heard a presentation from Vic tonight. It's something that we take serious. I made the decision to put him on the agenda in light of what happened in Florida and in Vermont. I wanted to let the board know and the public to know how diligent we're trying to be about that.
Here's what I found.
Siri's talking to me in the middle of the meeting. So Monday night, Vic and I are invited to a forum at the Bennington Art Center out on yeah, put on by the Bennington Banner, and on what they said was school violence. You've seen that. So I've had, like Jackie asked me why were board members invited. This is not our, oh, sorry, Meredith asked me why weren't board members invited. So Vic and I are going to be part of that panel discussion, more out of a desire to be part of it, to see what is being discussed. It seems like a pretty wide open agenda, and we'll see, but you're all invited to go 6 o'clock Monday night at Bennington Arts Center.
Unfortunately, Jim, not even the Bennington Police Department was invited. So.
They are now, but they weren't initially. When I inquired about that, when I got the phone call invited, and I called back and I said, who's going, so I know who else is there, and they told me it's the Vermont State Police. I asked about Bennington, and they said, well, this is a regional event and not specific to one town in Vermont. State Police rep in the region, but been assured by the Bennington chief that the Bennington Police are now invited, and that it was an oversight, and it's all been taken care of, so that's good.
And just to clarify, it's a Bennington Banner event, so it's nothing to say about the SVSU or anything.
No, it's not ours, but we are participating. Last thing I want to talk to you about, got one more term to throw out at you, in Act 46, Section 10. So you've heard of Section 9. Section 10 is the Secretary's response. So I've sent an email out to the boards, not all of them. I didn't send it out to MAU or the SVSU because you didn't. To every board that sent in a Section 9 report, There's some April meeting dates that the Secretary of Education, along with Brad James from AOE Finance, is going to be doing a series of half-hour meetings and inviting boards to come for conversations. We should all see that email. What I sent and requested, can we do it by go to meeting at central office? It seems to try and get 5 boards traveling to Barry at 2:30 on a Tuesday afternoon is just not going to work. So I've asked for the 2 dates that I've requested, if they're still available, is April 3rd and April 5th. I don't have times yet, but you'll see it in your email.
When did you send the email?
Tonight. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So,
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, so you wouldn't have seen it yet. So the important thing to remember, and this is what I'll need feedback from boards, is how do you want to proceed with this? If you filed a similar Section 9, I think there's no reason why you couldn't have a joint conversation. If North Bennington and Pownell, their Section 9 is different than the one, it has a different, I think they should have a separate meeting. But there's no reason why we all couldn't be in the same room at the same time. So, and what I said in your email, once I have more information as far as times and what dates are confirmed, because the dates I imagine will go quickly because it was sent out to all the SUs that filed Section 9s. So.
And we'll need to warn this as a meeting, yeah? If we're gonna have quorum,
Yeah.
we'll be talking, yeah.
Yeah, once we have a time, we should warn, because we could warn a carousel meeting for all boards who wanted to do it jointly, and if there's something separately, and they would be, they're half-hour time slots. So. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Chair report, very briefly. I wanted to welcome Jody. Welcome, Jody.
Thank you.
To the BSD board. And congratulations to Meredith as well for your reelection. So
Thank you.
very happy to have both of you on board. Thank you to everyone, all the voters who approved the BSD budget. It's always nice when that goes through the first time. And I know there was a tremendous amount of work done by our building principals and by Reine and by all the folks behind the scenes for that. Please.
Could everyone look at the Board of Directors and update your, since we just reorganized, update your contact information, make sure we have the right phone number and email. Yours is probably accurate because we just got it, but yeah.
Chris, can I interrupt one moment?
Sure.
And I apologize. I just had one very quick question that I thought I could sneak in with the superintendent's
Please.
report. It's just a very quick yes or no. I was just wondering if all BSD principals had been evaluated.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You'll see in the FYI that the integrated field review is in there. It's included in the FYI just so folks can have it and start
I
taking
should
a
say
look
yes
at
or
it.
in process of doing, so, yes.
Okay.
So everyone has the integrated field review. We will be talking about it at a board meeting at a future date, but I wanted folks to have it as soon as they could.
Good information.
And that's it for the chair report. Under FYI, we have the new student enrollment numbers. We have the budget status report, and again, the IFR that's in there as well. Given the time, I would be shocked if anyone was to make a motion to move into executive session.
You would be shocked?
I would be shy. It's pretty late. We've gone over a lot. If there's been one request already that we don't have executive session, and I want to be sensitive to everyone's time. So if there's a motion to go into executive session, I would certainly entertain that. But if there's not, then so be it.
I have a question. If there's not an executive session, what would be the next opportunity to have a discussion about some of the
Personnel
events
issues.
tonight?
So we would, one of two things. We would either hold a special meeting for the purpose of having executive session, or it's like 2 weeks until our next regularly scheduled meeting, maybe a little bit more. So it would fall into that as well. We could fall that.
I'm happy to, if there's a desire to go into executive session, I'm happy to do that, but I understand also that it's late for
Okay.
folks.
So could I have a motion to go to executive session, please? Thank you, Jayla. Could I have a second?
Second.
Thank you very much, Meredith. Any discussion? All those in favor of moving to executive session, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Very good. So